Chapter 40. Noelle and I enjoyed ourselves thoroughly shopping at the market. As I browsed the goods, I realized something: Bit Village might lack things simply because it is rural, but the cities must be quite advanced. Tools in my original world ran on electricity. Here they run on magical power. The reason I've been able to contribute so much in this village is because it's such a remote backwater where conveniences are scarce. By raising plants, I could raise the quality of life. If I had appeared in a city, or if this place had been more developed, I might have been seized as nothing more than a suspicious plant woman. Being born in the mountains of the frontier turned out to be a blessing. Even if goblins pulling me up by the roots and zombies attacking made it dangerous, I'd never want to go back. The market even had a plant shop, and while I was looking, Eli, the one organizing the market, spoke to me. Apparently he had been working with the shopkeeper to find rare plants for me. For now I've got this, haven't seen it in the village. All these kernels are seeds. Which Samaj should be able to grow it? Is this corn? What he held out rows of yellow kernels was oddly familiar. Plants in this world can be exactly like those from my old world, or they can be fantastical things found only here like me. This was very similar to corn. No matter the plant, as long as I get even a small part, I can absorb it, use my diversification skill, and mass produce it. Smiling, I had Noelle accept the corn. Later I could absorb it and check its name and properties. There was no need to ask Elia for a long explanation. And also, any use for this? What's this? Not food, is it? This one's said to bring good fortune. Normally it has 3 leaves, but sometimes 4 grow. That's said to be lucky. The heart-shaped leaves looked close to clover. But the 4-leaf clover most people in my world knew was a different plant. White clover whose leaves weren't heart-shaped. This resembled it, but was clearly another species of this world. I thought, well, Witch-san, maybe you could do something like you did with lilies of the valley. Some special change or clever use? Well, I could. Back in my world, they made strains that produced mostly 4-leaf clovers. I could do that here or go further, making plants with even more leaves or enormous 4-leaf clovers big enough to use as umbrellas. My diversification skill can trigger changes and mutations with certainty. I could easily make nutrient-rich strains of food crops. If I think about it, there's enormous potential for plant-based commerce. But if I do it too quickly, it'll seem unnatural. Better to let time pass, research it, and claim it's a natural mutation. Otherwise, I won't seem human. I nodded, and Eli beamed, rubbing his hands. He seemed convinced I'd produce profitable results. Then, as always, he laid on the flattery. It was merchant nature, so I took it with a grain of salt. Still, Witch-san, that veil suits you out here in the frontier. It's hard to dress up, isn't it? Always thought you had style, and glad you found something you liked. Yes, Witch-sama usually decorates herself with flowers, so she must like fashion. In truth, I covered myself in flowers to disguise the unnaturalness of my body, especially the Mandragora bloom atop my head. Impossible to hide, so I grew multiple flowers around it, making it look like a floral hat. Thankfully, a Mandragora's flower is beautiful, so it works as ornament. If it had been a Rafflesia reeking of rot or a cactus bristling with thorns, something that made people wonder why wear that, it would have been awful. Oh, right, humans like fashion. It had totally slipped my mind. The fabric shop was still thriving. At Quirly, the eccentric designer's shop, Ritter was talking with the owner. Perhaps people in this world, men and women both, enjoyed fashion more than I thought. And if I kept adorning myself only with flowers, while seeming indifferent to clothes, I might stand out as strange. Better to act more human-like, and care about clothing and ornaments as well. At this rate, a fashion trend may start here in the village. Watching you, Witch-san, people are bound to get interested. Me? Why? I'll be planning another market. You can look forward to it, might even make it a regular event. Turning toward the lively square, Eli's smile curved, calculating. You could almost hear the abacus in his head. I absorbed the 2 plants Eli gave me and checked them before planting them in the fields. The corn was called tukibi, just as in Japan, but it had another name here. Sweet frog eggs. That left me feeling conflicted. Food shouldn't be called things like that. Strange otherworlders, even as a Mandragora, I still had a better sense of taste, though frog eggs are delicious to Mandragoras. The clover-like plant was Mitsuba, or 3-leaf. In Japan, the same name was used for a culinary herb, but this was different, an ornamental plant. It bloomed white, pink, or pale yellow flowers like small round pom-poms. Very cute, often used to weave flower crowns. So, with these three-leaf plants, I can make strains that grow nothing but four-leaf clovers or even giant four-leaves. But I should wait, raise normal ones for a while, make it look natural. Noel wagged his tail happily in front of the new crops. Since I grew them, they could ripen regardless of season. He must have been thinking of how to cook them. Ile told me a lot of recipes, and they all sounded delicious. If it's soup, which Sama, you'll eat it too. Please look forward to it. Thanks. Even if my taste isn't human, this must be nutritious. Maybe it'll taste good to me too. But lately, birds have been troubling the fields. Tomorrow, I'll definitely catch them. I don't want the vegetables which Sama raised to be stolen. Birds, he explained. A sly, fast bird had settled nearby, raiding crops. Worse, it struck not in secret but right in front of people, as though mocking them. That's odd. It'd be safer to steal when no one's around. Noel seemed furious, feeling taunted. Even with his beastman agility, he couldn't catch it, and it was clever enough to break traps. Very troublesome. Then tomorrow I'll help catch it too. Which Sama yourself? I couldn't trouble you with that. As your attendant, I should handle it. That's not true. You're doing your best. I pointed at the field. Then myself. Noel understood, and drooped, ashamed of his weakness. He was still a child. There are things he can't do. No need to push himself. I patted his shoulder to encourage him. Sometimes keeping watch on the fields isn't bad because, by catching the bird, I can photosynthesize at the same time. 2 birds with 1 stone. Literally. Chapter 41. Under the bright late summer sky, I sat outside with Noel, waiting to catch the bird that had been raiding the fields. We set up chairs in the garden, watching over the crops while bathing in sunlight. Noel wore the hat I had made for him, but since he was human, too much sun wasn't good. So I wove together plants into something like a picnic parasol, making shade for him so he could rest without overdoing it. Which Sama, don't you need shade too? No, the sunlight feels good. I see plants need sunlight, so this must be part of your magical training as well. Noel accepted his own explanation, so I simply continued sunbathing. Since we were waiting for the bird, I had removed my veil, which only obstructed vision. My root face didn't need sunlight anyway, only the flowers and hair above needed it. Honestly, it felt better with the veil on. Feels like power is surging through me, like I could do anything right now. Unlike normal plants, I was a monster. Photosynthesis created magical power for me. The more sunlight I absorbed, the more mana-filled Mandragora I became. Even my root skin seemed shinier. Which Sama? Noel? Hello? Ellie, hello? Hikari-chan had work, so I came to play instead. Here, this is for you. Hikari, that was the name Ellie gave to a yellow sprout. She had followed it on its patrol outside the village and ended up here. Whenever Ellie visited, she always brought eggs. Today was no exception. Noel gratefully accepted them, his tail twitching uncontrollably with anticipation. What are you two doing? Catching the bird that's been troubling the fields. Oh, then I'll help. Yesterday, it took the fairy candy fruit from my house. So the village was suffering too. As a good witch, I couldn't ignore this. For the villagers' sake, I had to catch the bird. Surely this wasn't just an animal, but a monster. It had appeared suddenly where none had been before, likely coming from the demon lands. I can't let people suffer or they'll think I side with monsters, even if I'm a monster Mandragora myself. So Ellie joined us, but her attention quickly shifted to the plants. She was charmed by the little flowers of the 3-leaf plants, and when Noel explained the legend of the lucky 4-leaf, she began searching. Really, such a child? You're a child too, Noel. We're the same age. I mean responsibility, not age. Their childish banter reached my ears. Soon Ellie whispered something to Noel and he grew restless, eyes darting toward her as she picked flowers. Then, instead of watching the sky, his gaze roamed the ground. He had started searching for 4-leaf clovers as well. The ones growing now are all normal 3-leaf, so there shouldn't be many 4s, but looking for them is good play for kids. While the 2 of them played, I basked in the sun, dozing slightly, to avoid falling asleep outright. I stood, though truthfully, I could probably sleep standing if I wanted. Which Sama here for you? What? Her sudden voice startled me awake. Ellie stood at my feet smiling, holding out a crown of flowers. My eyes weren't real eyeballs, but Mandragora fruits. I didn't need eyelids to sleep, I only moved them occasionally as decoration, which meant I had been asleep with my eyes open. Luckily, no one noticed, she said. For you, so it's a gift, maybe they made it together. Thank you. The crown had one four-leaf among the flowers. Likely the one Noel had searched so hard for. I placed it upon my head. With all the blossoms already arranged there, it blended right in. The veil is lovely, but which Sama looks best in flowers? Noel wagged his tail happily. Ellie beamed with pride. Children love giving the things they make to adults. Smiling as I accepted it was what a good adult should do. It left a good impression. Something just flashed. A strange glint caught my eye. I looked up. A black shadow blocked the sun, glittering, a bird carrying something shiny. Ah, that bird. So, that's the culprit. A little high, but I can reach. It circled high, out of human reach. But I was a mandragora. It was not beyond my vines. I raised my hand, and vines shot forth. The bird flinched, wings beating as it tried to turn midair. In that instant, I spread the vines like a net, laced with paralytic toxin, and caught it. No matter how clever, once touched by poison, it could not escape. As expected of Witch Sama. Don't touch it, you two. Might get poisoned. The bird fell to the ground, tangled. Noel started forward, but I held him back with an arm. If the children touched it, they'd be paralyzed and collapse. Understood, so it's dangerous. Ellie, don't touch the bird, all right? It might be dangerous. Okay, I won't. It wasn't the bird that was dangerous, it was my toxin, but as long as they stayed away, it was fine. I withered the vines, leaving the stunned bird lying still, and picked it up. Ah, I've seen this before, the one I absorbed first. It was the same kind that had dropped from the sky when I first realized I'd become a mandragora. Likely from the demon lands, it had only fainted back then from my scream, so it must have some resistance to curses. But it clearly lacked resistance to poison. It trembled helplessly in my hand, eyes pleading. It was pretty tasty, maybe I'll eat it. But Noel deserves some bird meat too. As I thought it, the bird shivered and let out a pitiful cry. Help? It talked. My face twisted into a smile, reflexively, which meant, with the bird trembling in my grasp, begging for mercy, I looked like a gleeful villain. Good thing Noel and Ellie were behind me. Only the bird, shaking in my hand, saw that smile. Chapter 42. That bird that cried just now, it's a screamer bird, isn't it? They mimic human voices to lure people in. Oh, I see. That's a relief. It's not like it actually understands human speech. Following my instruction, Noel stayed back and called out from behind. According to his explanation, this bird is a type of monster that mimics its prey to draw them closer. It seems it wasn't a human reincarnated as a monster, which was a relief. This bird cries things like "help me" or "mother" to lure people into dangerous places where they're attacked by other monsters, and then it feeds on the corpses. What a horrible creature. Mimicking human voices to lower their guard is terrifying. I didn't know why such a bird was doing something like raiding crops in a human village, but if left alone, it might have led the villagers who came to deal with it straight into the monster's lairs outside the settlement. I'm glad that didn't happen. If I can't protect the villagers, people will start questioning the very purpose of a witch's existence. I just want to live in peace. So, this bird was trying to disturb my peaceful life, huh? It's a monster with high intelligence, able to mimic humans and resistant to curses and poisons. If it were a kind creature like me, fine. But ordinary monsters are dangerous and ought to be eliminated. Then how should I eat it, I wonder? Since I went to the trouble of catching it, I should decide how to cook it. While I pondered whether it was safe to feed to Noel, or whether I should just absorb it myself if it seemed risky, the bird continued to scream, "Help me," again and again, unable to move. But in the end, it was just imitation speech. The target is still a monster. No way it can escape being classified as prey for that. Poor thing. But it's a monster. It's dangerous. Yeah, that's true. Just as I was thinking that, Ellie started to pity the bird. She's still a child, so it's natural that her emotions get the better of her sometimes. That's exactly why this kind of monster mimics human speech to deceive people like her. When I turned to tell her there was no need for sympathy, her face looked so sad that killing the bird right in front of her suddenly didn't seem like something a good witch would do. A kind witch wouldn't do it. If she weren't watching, I totally would, though. As long as I'm being observed, I have to act like a virtuous witch, not a suspicious monster. Looking down at the bird again, I thought of a way to neutralize it. Then maybe I'll make it so I can finish it off somewhere unseen. I'll plant a seed in its body. I'd done something similar with Leonhardt before, so I knew the process. By dividing my consciousness and creating multiple bodies of plant material, I could make something that still obeyed my will even when separated from me. I decided to implant a Mandragora seed in this bird. Once planted, the seed would grow by feeding on the bird's nutrients whenever I willed it to. Even if curses or poisons didn't work, it couldn't survive being drained enough to nourish a mandragora. Perhaps I could have it absorbed when Ellie wasn't looking and create a new mandragora. Stoop. The bird began to cry out in agony as the seed took root inside its body. But perhaps that too was just mimicry of human pain, or maybe it really was suffering. After a while, the bird grew still and stopped screaming altogether. That's when a message appeared before my eyes. Acquired servant, startled. I let out a small yelp. I'd completely forgotten about my ability to display status information. A servant, like a familiar. I couldn't appraise others' statuses since that required the appraisal skill, but I could see information about myself or anything directly connected to me. Curious what servant meant, I checked. Species screamer bird vassal, level 26, vitality C, mana B, skills mimicry, high intelligence, evolution points, 0 description. A screamer bird whose body has been implanted with a fragment of a powerful monster, now bound in servitude. A loyal servant that obeys the will of the one who holds its life. Through the parasitic fragment in its heart, its master's commands can reach it anywhere. Even if no immediate threat seems nearby, do not let your guard down. What orders it may act upon depend entirely on its master. Having evolved to possess high intelligence, it can follow complex orders. Depending on its master's will, it may lure humans into danger or trap them. If you hear a cry for help, do not approach. Scary. Why do these description texts always sound like warnings? I'll make sure to control it properly, not to attack humans or cause trouble. I'd already proven I could neutralize monsters this way with the Mandragora sprouts. It seemed that planting one of my seeds turned the creature into a vassal, and now I could issue commands without speaking. I hadn't expected that simply implanting one of my seeds could enslave a monster. But this could be useful if a troublesome one appeared again. As long as I could plant a seed, I could create as many obedient subordinates as I liked. Wait, didn't I also plant a seed in Leonhardt-Eek? I suddenly remembered how I'd spread purifying roots through Leonhardt's poisoned body, not just his armor, to absorb the toxins. It seemed the condition for subjugation was specifically the planting of a mandragora seed. So treating Leonhardt's poison had been safe. Thank goodness. If other types of seeds worked too, that could have been disastrous. The thought that I might have unknowingly made Leonhardt my vassal was enough to make me shriek internally from pure horror. Huh? That bird got quiet? You're right, is it not dangerous anymore? Maybe it realized the difference in strength. It was a smart bird after all. It probably sensed Witch-sama's overwhelming aura. Huh, am I giving off some kind of aura? Well, maybe I'm releasing oxygen from photosynthesis, but still. The screamer bird now sat quietly in my hands, no longer uttering a sound. Since it seemed to be obedient, I had the vines of my glove feed it an antidote. Once freed from paralysis, the bird hopped to the ground, picked something up, and brought it back to me. It was a string of glass ornaments shaped like droplets, some sort of decoration. That must have been what glittered in the sky earlier. Wow, pretty. A present from the bird? Seems like it. Guess it really intends to obey Witch-sama now, though I'm still its senior here. So maybe it's saying sorry. It's a hair ornament, right? Probably, but the stem's broken, so it can't be worn. A broken hair ornament, huh? It's beautiful, but useless like this. Maybe it was throwaway, or perhaps the bird had stolen it from someone and broke it. I stared at it, and it let out a squeaky hi-eye, a sound that could have been fear or apology. Unlike my sprouts, I couldn't quite sense its thoughts, perhaps because it wasn't plant-based. Was that "don't suspect me"? Or "yes, I'm sorry"? Hard to tell. These are the kind of things Query sells, right? She mentioned once that if she doesn't like how a piece turns out, she just breaks or throws it away. What? What a waste! It is a waste, but very much like her. She seems like the type to do that. No one in the village wore ornaments like this, so it must have been the work of Query, the designer who came during the marketplace. She often sketched designs or crafted pieces even while at her booth, so this was likely one of them. Hard to understand an artist's sensibilities. How could she discard something this lovely? If she's throwing it away anyway, I might as well remake it and use it. I've been wanting to look a little more human with some accessories. If the base stem was gone, I could just make one. Extending a vine from the remaining short shaft, I shaped it into a rod and tucked it into my hair. Since the part touching my head was vine, I could weave it in securely so it wouldn't fall. Placed near the flower atop my head, it blended perfectly just right. Witch-sama, you look beautiful. It suits you perfectly, Witch-sama. Actually, seeing you wear it so gracefully might make Query and even this ornament regain some confidence. As expected of Witch-sama. That hadn't been my intention, but Noel seemed convinced, so that was fine. Now, as for the screamer bird, it had presented me an offering, and to destroy it after accepting that would be rather cruel. I mean, I'm a monster myself, so cruelty is relative, but since it was now a vassal and would obey, and as long as it didn't trouble humans, letting it go seemed fine. Still, the description text would totally expose that I'm a monster, so don't show yourself around people, okay? Especially not in front of Nikolaus. He can see others' statuses and he'll probably come again. He couldn't see my status, but he might see the screamer birds. So I commanded it to stay away from humans, especially Nikolaus. Might as well give it another job. Let's see if you find any rare plants, bring them to me. I gave it 3 commands: do not harm humans, do not appear before humans, and bring back rare plants. Then I released it into the sky. The bird circled once overhead, then flew off toward the mountains. As long as it left the village, the problem was solved. To think Witch-sama could even tame such a troublesome monster, truly amazing. Witch-sama, can you talk to animals? Is that how you became friends with Hikari and the others too? That's so cool. With that, the bird no longer disturbed our fields or the village. Noel and Ellie seemed completely unconcerned, case closed. A few days later, after I'd completely forgotten about the bird, Leonhardt came by and widened his eyes at the sight of my new hair ornament. Which don't know that hairpiece. When he pointed out the ornament gifted by the bird I'd turned into a vassal through parasitic Mandragora, I nearly screamed at the reminder that I'd almost done the same to him. But my cry only came out as a smile. If I ever ended up enslaving a human, I'd stop being a good witch and become just another malicious monster. I'd better be careful. Chapter 43, Nikolaus, the birth of a new demon realm and the appearance of the flower witch. These 2 topics had become the most frequent points of discussion in the royal castle's meetings. Summoned as a reference witness, Nikolaus heaved a sigh, thoroughly exasperated. When a new demon realm appears, there's a high risk of a monster calamity, a shift in borders between monster territories and human lands. The signs were already there, and it was only natural for the kingdom to plan ahead. What made it tiresome was that the talks went nowhere. I'm telling you, that witch is cooperative and capable. She's more than qualified as support. That alone is enough to make her a strong asset. However, if she's a veteran powerful enough to have survived the war against the dragons, wouldn't it be better to have her lead from the front lines? Huh. Are you idiots? Putting that witch on the front line is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. A witch who survived the dragon war would indeed be a one-person army. It was natural some wanted her spearheading the fight to minimize damage, but Nikolaus wouldn't allow it. He wanted her in the rear, supporting as safe as possible. Sending our top-class combatant for a simple monster outbreak is the height of folly. She's a force to be preserved. If we lose her now, what'll you do when another dragon-level calamity appears? When that happens, surely the great mage himself would. Even though she's stronger than I am, if anyone's going to be sacrificed first, it should be me. Nikolaus lived in the castle as a court magician under a contract to stake his life in times of crisis. He had no intention of running from battle, but he was fed up with these old children, barely a tenth of his age and green in magic. The flower witch's value was immense. Nikolaus could wield many kinds of spells, but that breadth came at the cost of depth, broad and shallow, a versatile jack-of-all-trades. If someone had to die first, better him than the witch. The last thing he wanted was to be the only one left alive. Still, in versatility, the great mage surpasses her. Magic that controls plants seems limited in scope, doesn't it? People who've never seen a demon that truly mastered their magic should keep their ignorant mouths shut. Aside from teleportation, there's nothing I can do that she can't. And teleportation isn't as convenient as you think. Her plant magic excelled far beyond combat. Even if human lands shrank, her productivity could prevent famine. She could brew medicines, purify poisons, and even contribute to public hygiene. Nikolaus's magic was for a society already thriving, adding convenience. The flower witch's magic underpinned civilization itself. In any disaster, who could rebuild faster was obvious. It's hard to grasp her power without seeing it. She tosses off impossibly advanced magic without changing expression. It's abnormal. Ordinary minds can't picture it. Honestly, is there anything she can't do, even lacking a spell? She produces an alternative. As for teleportation, the spatial magic she couldn't use, its cost was huge. You couldn't shuttle crowds or heavy cargo quickly, convenient in theory, constrained in practice. With her potions, though, even teleportation's performance would jump. And Nikolaos could stack her support onto his attacks and defenses. Have her support from the rear while he takes the front with the knights. That was the safest, least accident-prone arrangement. Some may still die, but with her handing out full recovery potions like candy, casualties will plummet. They don't want to lose personnel that they cultivated, sure, but a monster like her won't appear even after 500 years of training. Raising humans for 10 or 20 years would never reach her. Even Nikolaos, who had been at it for 5 centuries, didn't feel close. It would seem they have no idea how precious she is. The old must beware their narrowing vision. You're supposed to listen to your elders. For starters, you realize the witch isn't in the National Army, right? If neither side knows the other's methods, they can't coordinate with the knights. Do you plan to have her handle the entire overflow from the demon realm alone? That may be so, but surely it's the citizens' duty to stand up in crisis. That witch went unnoticed for 5 centuries during the dragon calamity, an existential threat. Demons from across the world gathered to fight. She could well have belonged to another nation. If you demand her life without proper terms, she might abandon this kingdom. Though that soft-hearted witch wouldn't. Without being asked, she'd stay for Bit Village. But a monster disaster was a numbers game, waves upon waves. Handling them alone was difficult, and one mistake could kill her. Nikolaos would not let her die before he did. With her support, my combat strength more than doubles. I'm volunteering. What's the problem? Enough. Since the great mage insists, we proceed under that plan. We don't have time for endless debate. Understood. Crown Prince Cedric's single word settled it for now. Nikolaos exhaled. As long as the witch stayed in the rear, that was enough. He'd keep quiet about the rest unless asked. You were unusually assertive today, Nikolaos. After the meeting, as Nikolaos moved to leave, Cedric stopped him. Expecting a scolding, he instead saw a wry smile. Don't look so displeased. Now that you acknowledge her as a witch, she's your only kin, isn't she? It's only natural to want to protect her. That's not it. We don't even know if she is a witch. We call her that for convenience. Even so, you judged she has the strength to survive the dragon war. If that isn't a witch, what is she? Only demons could wield such magic, and even among demons, she stood far above a 500-year-old like Nikolaos. If she wasn't one of the ancient witches who survived, then what? Who knows? A monster, a freak, maybe an anomalous evolution of a monster. That has no credibility. You don't believe it either. You're not honest at all. So what's the real business? It wasn't to nitpick his attitude, then. There was something else. Pressed. Cedric nodded. You said it yourself. She doesn't belong to the kingdom. Then we must formally ask for cooperation. Send an envoy and make a proper request. Sure. But she can't speak, and she can only read and write ancient script. Exactly why I'd like you to go. Mediate between the witch and the crown. You'll likely be visiting often, so your research may have to wait. Fine. There's no one more suitable. He could feel his mood lift. Even if not researching at the castle, the village was full of curiosities. He no longer needed to force himself to create new demons. He had other pursuits. Though he didn't show it, Cedric noticed the subtle change and smiled, rare for him. What? That's a rare face for you too. I also wish to repay my teacher, even a little teacher. That took Nikolaos back. When Cedric was a child, he'd taught him a bit of magic, briefly. The prince hadn't forgotten and considered it a debt. Repaying me with work, is it? Some gratitude. I'll prepare the formal documents. Be ready. Watching Cedric back for a few seconds as he walked away, Nikolaos turned toward his room, thinking through what to prepare. What would make a good gift for the flower witch? But somehow he was Sue that whatever he brought, she would welcome him with that gentle smile. Chapter 44. The end to a peaceful daily life is always abrupt. One cloudy afternoon, when the sky was thick with heavy gray and rain seemed only moments away, I sensed a huge presence approaching and let out a silent scream. Witch Sama, what's wrong? Noelle asked, puzzled as I suddenly stood up with a bright smile. But this was no time to talk. That aura, this was an unwelcome visitor. That's what the veil is for. I pulled out the veil I'd bought at the last market and draped it to hide my face, then checked myself in the mirror to make sure nothing looked suspicious. The reflection showed a woman who looked human, someone who liked flowers and hair ornaments, maybe even a bit vain. The translucent veil couldn't fully hide my face, but it was better than nothing. All right, ready. Eek, the sound of the bellflower chime I used as a doorbell startled me. The overwhelming pressure outside the door made my heart freeze. Noel went to answer, opening the door with calm politeness. Standing there in his true form, not disguised as Leonhardt like the last time, was Nikolaus. "Ah, great mage, good day. So that's why Witch Sama's been acting all fidgety. No, you don't have to tell him that." If Nikolaus realized I'd sensed his arrival and gotten nervous, he might start doubting my identity. He didn't fully believe I was a witch to begin with. Any small inconsistency could betray me. When Noel said that, Nikolaus's sharp gaze turned my way and I barely managed to suppress another scream. So because I was coming, huh? Eek, he knows something, doesn't he? Well, at least the mirror's being put to good use. Sarantelli, Witch Sama often stands in front of it. Because I'd been in front of the mirror when he came in, he must have assumed I was checking my appearance. In reality, I used it to make sure my disguise still looked human and not like the monster underneath. If he mistook that for vanity, perfect. But if he saw through it as me checking my costume, I was doomed. I watched his every move like a mouse cornered by a cat. Anyway, today I'm here as an official envoy from the kingdom. Oh, thank goodness, so he's not here because he found out something. Wait, the kingdom? As in the human kingdom? It had to be the nation this bit village belonged to. I didn't even know its name, but Nikolaus lived in the castle, so of course he'd be sent as a representative. But an envoy for what? I haven't done anything wrong, have I? I was just a humble, good-natured Mandragora trying to live quietly as a kind witch. For someone like me to get an official envoy, it made no sense. Maybe because I was a surviving demon species like Nikolaus, they wanted to keep tabs on me. Great mage, please have a seat. You've got something important to discuss with Witch Sama, right? I'll go make tea. Noel led Nikolaus to a chair, and since ignoring him would look bad, I reluctantly took up the writing board he'd given me before and sat across from him, bracing for whatever news this was. Nikolaus took out a scroll. We talked about this before, a request for cooperation in defending the demon realm. This is the formal contract from the kingdom. You can't read it, so I'll summarize. Oh, right, that thing I remember now. He unfolded the parchment and read aloud. In short, it was a formal request to defend Bit Village, a territory of the Veneria Kingdom. And its people, we ask the Flower Witch for her assistance. The requested cooperation was all in the realm of support work, brewing potions, reinforcing Nikolaus's magic attacks, healing knights, and countering monster toxins. It was a rear-line assignment and fairly safe. Yep, just like I thought before, this is totally fine. If I can prove I'm a helpful witch to humans, I'll be safe and secure. I nodded to show agreement. Nikolaus then handed me a pen like a fountain pen and pointed to a blank line at the bottom. If you agree, sign here. Sign as in my name? I don't have one. What do I do? What kind of name does a witch even use for things like this? Ah, right. You don't have a public name. Why not just write Flower Witch? Demon had something called a true name, which wasn't to be shared lightly with others. Nikolaus himself used an alias for convenience, since others needed a name to call him, keeping his real name secret. While I wrote Huano Monu on the document in Japanese, I could feel his gaze burning into me the whole time. He was definitely watching for any mistake that might expose me. Terrifying. Thank you for waiting. Here's some pure bloom tea, Witch Sama's favorite. Please enjoy. Thanks. Nikolaus had started to say something, but Noel returned with tea. It was a recent blend of his buds of the pure bloom flower mixed with regular leaves to add fragrance, similar to the jasmine tea from my previous life. Once I finished signing, I accepted the cup Noel handed me. The floating petals of pure bloom glimmered faintly as I gently stirred, letting the essence seep into the tea. This flower tastes so good, even though the zombies taste so bitter. Though the plant likely grew from zombie remains, tasty was tasty. Humans use compost too. It's not so different. As long as it's transformed, it's fine. While I calmed myself sipping tea, Nikolaus checked my signature and tucked the document away inside his robe. Your pay will depend on your contribution, but it won't be cheap. You can rest easy about that. I don't need money. I wrote on the board given to me by Nikolaus, better to use it than leave it idle. If I didn't, he might think, why won't she use what I gave her, and grow suspicious? Even if I got money, their utility for me was limited. Noel could buy what we needed with what we already earned from Eli. Extra gold or jewelry would only pile up uselessly. If he really wanted to give me something, fertilizer would be far better. Even Pure Bloom could use some nutrient variety now and then. You really have no greed, huh? There's nothing you want. What I want is peace and quiet. All I wanted was a calm life, free of suspicion, especially from Nikolaus. but saying that would only raise more questions, and the mere thought made me tremble. Well, fine, here. Huh? What's this? He reached into his robe and took out what looked like a small crystal sphere. I tilted my head, unsure of its purpose. Honestly, how deep was that robe? It was like a portable storage dimension. There aren't many magic tools out here, right? This house doesn't even have lighting. Use this. A light source maybe? How does it work? I examined the crystal closely. Since it was a magic tool, I guessed it ran on mana, so I tried channeling my own into it. The crystal glowed with a gentle, warm light. I could tell it mimicked sunlight. The sensation was just like basking in the sun. You like plants, don't you? Your house is full of leaves and vines. With that, you'll be fine even indoors. Wait, that means I can sunbathe inside the house. At that moment, for the first time, I thought Nikolaus might actually be a nice person. I quickly scribbled thank you on the board with all the sincerity I could muster. He just snorted and turned away, looking bored. Chapter 45. It's adjusted so it won't harm the human body, and it works fine as ordinary lighting. The controls are. Despite Nikolaus's usual sour expression, his explanation was patient and precise. Once the crystal was filled with mana, its light could be turned on or off using a separate control block, something like a small square remote. You could place it anywhere and simply brush your hand across it to switch between light and dark. In this village, such magic tools were rare, so we'd been using glow lamps and lantern plants for light. I suppose cities must have many convenient devices like this, things that functioned almost like the home appliances from my previous world. I vaguely remembered seeing a few similar items for sale at the market. Magic instead of electricity, huh? I guess in the countryside where people's mana and resources are limited, tools like these never became common, not enough distribution either. I immediately put Nikolaus's gift to use, weaving a net of vines to hold the crystal and suspending it from the ceiling. The sky was gloomy today, and with the light on, the whole room seemed brighter. The glow was softer than sunlight, but being able to soak in something close to daylight indoors felt wonderful. It made the top of my head, my vines feel glittery sparkling. Definitely not shiny bald. Wow, even the shadows on the floor look stylish. He's right. Humans do like stylish things. Maybe if I just add a little touch here. Since Noelle seemed delighted by the patterns cast across the floor, I grew a few yellow leaves along the supporting vines. The light filtering through them made leaf-shaped shadows dance on the floor like sunlight flickering through autumn trees. It gave the room a gentle, human sort of beauty. Nikolaus had really given me something nice. You could at least wait until I leave before redecorating. While I was happily adjusting the light fixture, Nikolaus muttered in his usual flat tone, sipping his tea. That made me realize how rude it might seem to immediately play with a guest's gift right in front of him. I froze. Sorry, I got carried away? Well, it's fine. Anyway, I need to report to the knights stationed here, so I'll be going. Oh, he's heading to the knights' quarters? Then I'll go too. I feel safer watching him until he leaves. Nikolaus might not be a bad person, and maybe this present was genuine goodwill toward a fellow witch, but that was exactly why I couldn't let my guard down. A real demon like him was the biggest threat to my disguise. If anyone could expose me for what I truly was, it'd be him. I needed to observe him carefully, learn how he acted, and make sure he never suspected a thing. As he stood and headed toward the door, I followed a few steps behind. He glanced back at me. I knew you'd follow. Well, Witch-sama looks like it's going to rain, so I'll bring in the laundry first. I'll catch up soon. Oh, okay. But if it does rain, just stay home, all right? I pointed to the sky, then touched the droplet ornament in my hair so it swayed, and finally gestured toward the house. Noelle tilted his head, thought for a moment, and then said, "If it rains, I'll stay and watch the house?" I nodded. That ornament turned out surprisingly useful for gestures involving water. The bird that gave it to me had been a nuisance, but this little trinket deserved praise outside. The air was damp and heavy, the thick clouds smothering the sun. Rain would start any minute. Under that dark sky, Nikolaus walked toward the village, and I followed several paces behind, close enough to keep up, but not beside him. If I didn't walk next to him, maybe he wouldn't talk to me. That child is sharp, so much for that plan. He didn't even turn his head, but the words were clearly meant for me. I can't talk, and he knows it. So what was I supposed to do? Still, I listened silently, I figured you only took that kid in because you couldn't abandon someone pitiful. But he's actually competent, or maybe that's your influence. No, not at all. He's just naturally good. Noel's clever, honest, and hardworking all on his own. All I'd done was make medicine when he was sick, sew him clothes, and grow edible plants for him. The rest was all him. Who raises you? What kind of adult you grow up with? It makes all the difference. That boy was lucky to be found by you. Noel lost his family, so I don't know if lucky fits. Oh wait, Nikolaus lost his kin too, didn't he? Maybe that's why he cares? All his kind had perished in the dragon disaster, and he'd been raised among humans. Losing one's people and living among another race, he and Noel really did share something. Well, I'm not even human, but still, maybe that's why he sympathized with Noel. Don't worry, I'll take care of him till he grows up. I'm a good Mandragora, after all. I made sure to look serious and sincere. Nikolaus glanced back. I know I'm not blaming you. What? Staying angry forever is stupid anyway. I'm not mad anymore. Wait, you were angry? About what? I had no idea what he meant, and panic churned inside me. Outwardly, I could only keep smiling. I prayed that expression wouldn't make things worse. Nikolaus faced forward again, saying nothing more as he walked. What did I even do? Tell me, please, don't just go silent. It's scary, Simon. Was it because I'd played with the gift right away? Since then, the whole way to the knight's lodging, Nikolaus hasn't said a word, while I followed him quietly, my mind full of unanswered questions that weren't given voice. Chapter 45.5, Nikolaus, Part 1. As an envoy sent to conclude a joint battle pact with the Flower Witch, Nikolaus visited her home. Since he was the one seeking cooperation, of course he had prepared a gift. She seems to like plants, so something related to that should work. She's got magic power to spare, but this countryside is too remote. She doesn't even have any magic tools. A magic device useful for plants should be perfect. Since this was an official visit, there was no need for disguise. When he stood before the witch's house, the chime of lilies of the valley rang, and the front door opened. As expected, the one who appeared was Noel, the wolf beastman serving as the witch's attendant.
Ah, great mage, good day. So that's why Witch Sama's been acting all fidgety. Fidgety. Demons possessed far greater magical power than other races, allowing them to sense each other's presence when nearby. Nikolaus already knew she was home, so naturally the witch must have realized he was coming as well. And when he wondered what she might have been doing, it turned out she'd been standing before the mirror he'd once given her, trying on an unfamiliar hair ornament and veil, paying much more attention to her appearance than when they last met. So because I was coming, huh? Well, at least the mirror's being put to good use.
It seemed the witch had hurried to fix her appearance because Nikolaus was visiting. If she cared enough to do that as a fellow demon, he didn't mind in the least. Noel had said she used the mirror often, so even if the gift had been a little impulsive, he was glad it pleased her. Anyway, today I'm here as an official envoy from the kingdom. Noel reacted immediately, guiding Nikolaus swiftly to the table. The witch only tilted her head gently, seemingly having no idea why Nikolaus had been dispatched as a messenger. When he reminded her that it was something they had discussed before, she finally seemed to remember and nodded. Well, demons from the old days weren't used to signing contracts like this. A verbal promise was probably enough back then. When he asked her to sign her agreement, she looked confused. Among demons, it was normal to use blood for a pact, never to write one's name. A demon's true name was not something to reveal lightly. I guess I've gotten too used to human customs. Of course she wouldn't know. Humans use names in contracts. That was why Nikolaus's foster father had given him one, Nikolaus, so that the last surviving demon could live easily among humans. He told her she didn't need to write her true name, that a common name would do. And then the thought struck him. If she's going to keep interacting with humans, maybe she should have a usable name too? She clearly wasn't used to such customs, and it might not be a bad idea for him to give her one himself. Me giving her a name that's backwards, isn't it? Still, Nikolaus had far more experience dealing with nobles and the kingdom. If not for the dragon calamity, demons would have lived freely, each in their own favored lands, studying magic as they pleased, sometimes keeping beast folk attendants. So this witch, too, had likely lived in some remote place like Bit Village, researching plant magic. 500 years ago, the kingdom hadn't been nearly as developed, and she probably had no dealings with nobles or the powerful. He was about to say he could give her a name suitable for nobles to use, but Noel returned carrying tea and he closed his mouth. No, that would be too kind to someone who'd abandoned him all this time. Better to drop it. To cover the unfinished words, he spoke instead about her compensation. Her contribution would surely be great, and she would receive a generous reward, enough to transform her magic toolless rural life entirely. I don't need money. You really have no greed, huh? There's nothing you want? The witch asked for nothing, only smiled faintly. Her lack of desire was almost too much. She showed no personal wants, so all Nikolaus knew about her preferences was that she liked plants. Makes choosing a gift a pain. The less someone wants, the harder it is to guess what they'll like. This time he'd chosen a magical device that produced light favorable to plant growth. Nikolaus had adjusted it so it was harmless to humans and could serve as indoor lighting as well. The witch's house was covered, even on the walls, in leaves and vines which must have taken considerable magic to maintain. But with this light, her magical expenditure could be greatly reduced. When he explained the device, the witch simply wrote, "Thank you." Yet seeing her immediately hang it from the ceiling and decorate it with care made her feelings obvious. She's way too happy, acting like a kid who just tore open a new toy. As the dim interior brightened, the witch's hair and the hairpin within it gleamed beautifully. Watching her, Nikolaus felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. If only you'd shown yourself sooner. No, there must have been a reason. Some reason you couldn't come to see me even though I'm your only kin, because the witch didn't hate him. She could be so delighted by a simple gift. There was no way she felt nothing. On the contrary, her every gesture showed she cared for him deeply as kin, which meant there had to be a reason, something significant. Well, fine. Maybe it's time to forgive her. There's no point in resenting someone forever. Whatever had kept her away for 500 years couldn't have been mere mourning for their fallen kin. Perhaps, someday, she'd tell him. Demons lived long lives. He could afford to wait. When Nicola spoke to the witch who was still absorbed with her new device, she turned and smiled at him. The smile carried a hint of shyness, and though she was far older, in that moment she looked somehow girlish and innocent. Chapter 45.6 Nikolaus, Part 2. He wanted to linger at the witch's house and relax, but today he was here for work. After finishing the cup of purified blossom tea, there was no excuse to stay any longer, and Nikolaus reluctantly decided to move on to his next task. The defense operation for the frontier required detailed coordination with the stationed Night Corps, so he told the witch he was heading to the Knight's base in Bit Village. Quietly, she followed after him. Apparently, she intended to come along. I knew you'd follow. He could see her smiling beneath the veil. He'd already expected she would follow, so it was no surprise. The witch always saw him off whenever he teleported home. Though she said nothing. Perhaps she wanted to spend as much time as possible with her kin. Or maybe it was a motherly kind of concern. Witch Sama, looks like it's going to rain, so I'll bring in the laundry first. I'll catch up soon. Just as he said, dark clouds were spreading across the sky. Rain could start any minute. The witch gestured toward Noelle as if to give instructions, but pointing at the sky and then touching her hairpin made it hard to tell what she was trying to say. If it rains, I'll stay and watch the house. When Noelle said that, the witch nodded, and only then did Nikolaus realize what they meant. In fact, it was impressive Noelle understood her so quickly. Or maybe they'd simply spent enough time together to build that kind of mutual trust. A beastman child raised by a witch, Nikolaus himself had been raised by a human. But the lifespan of humans and demons were completely different. To him, his foster father's life had ended in the blink of an eye. Demons matured only slightly slower than humans, so day-to-day life hadn't been difficult, but the sense of loss had stayed with him ever since. Under the dim sky, the witch walked several steps behind him. Perhaps she still felt guilty toward him. That might be why she never walked at his side. If I start a conversation, will she come closer? If he showed that he bore no grudge, maybe she would try to close that delicate distance. Thinking so, he spoke up. That kid's sharp. I figured you only took that kid in because you couldn't abandon someone pitiful. But he's actually competent, or maybe that's your influence. Of course, since the witch never spoke, this turned into Nikolaus talking to himself. Still, he knew she was listening. It'd be a lie to say I'm not jealous. That beastman kid's clearly growing up in a good environment. The trust in the boy's eyes, the proud way he looked at the witch. There was no mistaking it. That child lived a contented life with nothing to complain about. Who raises you, what kind of adult you grow up with, it makes all the difference. That boy was lucky to be found by you. Nicolaus's foster parent had been a good man too. He'd raised the last surviving demon so he could live by human norms while also teaching him the ancient tongue to inherit the knowledge of his kin. Hey, why do you call me Nicolaus? I already have another name, don't I? That's a name to help you live among humans. Humans use names to connect with each other. So when someone calls your name, you'll always have a bond that keeps you tied to this world. Think of it as another self. In the old texts, it says, demons use their specialty as another name. I'm studying water magic right now, so maybe in the future I could be called Water Mage or something. No, that title would only hurt you. Take the human name instead. Think of it as a nickname. It's one of the few things I can give you. He remembered that conversation now. Back then, he hadn't understood what those words meant, but later he did. Nicolaus could use all kinds of magic at a high level and had even earned the epithet mage versed in all things. But there were no other witches or magicians left in the world. There was no need to distinguish himself by what kind of magic he used. When people said magician or demon, they could only mean Nicolaus. That title would only emphasize his loneliness. His foster father must have thought. Well, turns out this witch survived after all, but for 500 years, I really was the only demon left. If you'd raised me instead, I probably would have turned out very different. Even so, she hadn't appeared for 5 centuries. People said the witch who had mastered plant magic lost her voice as the price for that power, but it wasn't something she had ever said herself. During the Dragon War, while the rest of their kin perished, could she really have survived unscathed? Maybe she'd lost her voice because her body had been terribly wounded. She's always covered up, and sometimes her movements seem stiff. Maybe she still carries some kind of injury. Maybe it had taken her a long time to recover enough to move again, to become someone who could appear in front of others at all. That would make sense. The witch never spoke of her past, leaving him to imagine everything. Still, he was sure she must have had her reasons she couldn't come to see the only other one of their kind. She was far too kind, too gentle, even if she'd stayed away to mourn their fallen kin. To avoid any contact at all was strange. Someone like her wouldn't have ignored him without cause. When he glanced back, she was looking down, her expression serious. Maybe his words had sounded like he was blaming her for not coming to him. I know, I'm not blaming you. Staying angry forever is stupid anyway. I'm not mad anymore. When he said that, the witch smiled visibly beneath her veil. She seemed genuinely happy to know he didn't resent her. Feeling oddly unsettled by that smile, Nicolaus turned away and began walking faster. She was probably still smiling behind him, but there was no need to check. They walked in silence until they reached the knight's lodging, and just then, a familiar face stepped out of the building. Sorry to keep you waiting, Murasaki-chan. Huh? Magician Dono, literally Purple-chan. What the hell is going on here? By the entrance stood a long planter, and in it lay a voluptuous Mandragora draped lazily in a purple cloth. When Ritter, the knight who had once served as Nicolaus's assistant, came out, the Mandragora rose languidly and leaned toward his legs. Ritter picked it up with a sappy smile, noticing Nicolaus only then, tilting his head. Nicolaus was the one who wanted to tilt his head. Ah, let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Murasaki-chan. No, she's not even human. A loveweed, a charm monster. Did Mandragoras have the power to enchant humans like that? Or was this one special? If so, it was dangerous, and he hadn't received any report of it. Clearly, he'd have to question them. Chapter 45.7. Nicolaus, Part 3. I haven't received any report about this. Are you hiding information from me? No, of course not. It's just, this is a private matter, not something that needed to be in an official report. A holy knight responsible for subjugating monsters, claiming that dating one didn't merit a report. Nicolaus could hardly believe it. While he narrowed his eyes suspiciously, Ritter waved his hands in a panic. Ah, it's not like I forced her or anything. We're a recognized couple, which Sama approves. At those words, Nicolaus instinctively turned toward the witch. She only smiled serenely, seemingly unconcerned. The Mandragora in question was under her control. If it were dangerous, she'd have dealt with it. Assuming she bore no ill will, which he believed unlikely, then this Ritter wasn't being enchanted. He genuinely loved the Mandragora and thought of her as his lover. And since the witch didn't seem surprised at all, perhaps relationships between humans and monsters were nothing unusual to her. So maybe that theory's true, that demons were born from humans and monsters mingling. Nicolaus had studied his race through the records left by his kin and through human writings from 5 centuries ago. One such record proposed that the ancestors of demons were the offspring of humans and monsters, though modern scholars dismissed it as myth, but perhaps among the ancient demons it had been known fact. That would explain why this witch could accept such a scene without question. Looks like my research direction wasn't wrong after all. I could use these two as research subjects, actually. Humans and plant-type monsters were vastly different species. Their biology shouldn't be compatible. Still, there had to be some method worth studying. Certainly, the witch's subjugation mark confirmed that the Mandragora was harmless, so it could technically be considered a private affair. If Nikolaus oversaw it as part of research, there'd be no issue, or so he decided to think. Well, fine then, if you ever want kids, I'll help. Magician Dono, you're so kind, thank you. But only after we're married.
What?
The idea of a human marrying a monster was absurd, but Ritter had always been a bit of a dreamer for a common knight. That was partly why Nikolaus had kept him as an assistant. Now, though, Ritter might serve better as a research specimen. Just then, another knight appeared from the building, calling Ritter's name, probably wondering why he was taking so long.
Ah.
Witch Sama and Magician Dono as well? That's a rare pairing. Leonhardt, the one-eyed knight, spotted the witch first. He smiled warmly at her, then, realizing Nikolaus was there too, straightened his expression. For some reason, that shift irritated Nikolaus more than it should have. We have to discuss the frontier defense plans. It'll take at least one night.
I see.
So you may be staying here several days then. Probably, during that time. Something moved at the edge of his vision, and he trailed off. The witch, who had been standing quietly behind him until now, suddenly walked off toward the open space beside the knight's quarters. She raised her hand over the ground, and before their eyes, a tree began to sprout, growing rapidly into a massive trunk. It hollowed itself from within, branches weaving together to form a door. By the time the growth stopped, it had clearly become a house. Seriously, who just makes a house like that? All he'd said was that he'd be staying in the village for a few days. But if she built this at that exact moment, it could only be for him. Even if it was meant as hospitality, wasn't this going a bit too far? Hey, what exactly are you doing? The witch turned back with her usual gentle smile. There had been no such tradition among demons as gifting someone a house. She walked up to him, wove some vines together with delicate fingers, and formed slightly crooked letters. I thought you might need a place to stay. You're an idiot if you think a simple lodging needs that. He had been planning to camp near her house using a magic tent. Maybe observe her plant magic while he was at it. But she must have considered his convenience with the knights and gone out of her way to build it here instead. Did she really see him as someone who couldn't take care of himself? No, that's not it. Just like she's my only kin, I'm hers too. It's only natural she'd want to fuss over me. Nikolaus kept finding reasons to justify her actions, just as she, perhaps, treated him like a much younger relative she felt compelled to look after. Considering the age difference, that wasn't unreasonable. She kept smiling at him, clearly waiting for his response. Well, since you went to the trouble, I'll use it. Thanks. It had been a long time since he'd last thanked anyone. When he turned away, avoiding her gaze, he met Leonhardt's eyes. The knight looked oddly restrained, his expression caught between politeness and something else. Even though Nikolaus rarely formed close bonds with humans after living among them for centuries, he could still read their emotions well enough. Jealousy, huh? Falling for a demon, humans really don't learn. It's hopeless. The difference in lifespan was an unbridgeable wall between their races. For demons, being the one who's left behind was always easier. Witch Sama, it looks like rain. You should head back soon. Shall I escort you? The witch shook her head. Then a cold drop struck Nikolaus's skin. One, then many fat droplets began to fall in earnest. It would soon turn into a downpour. Murasaki-chan will get soaked. Let's hurry inside. The Mandragora was a plant-type monster. A little water wouldn't hurt it. But her lover clearly couldn't stand to see her in the rain and hurried inside carrying the small creature in his arms. Nikolaus, unwilling to get drenched, jogged in after them. But Leonhardt and the witch didn't follow. What are they doing? After a while, Leonhardt returned, holding a Mandragora dressed in green, a different one from the purple one Ritter carried, and using a large leaf as an umbrella. Where's the witch? She left this Mandragora with me and went home. Apparently it was nearby when the rain started, and she wanted it to have shelter. Leonhardt cradled the green Mandragora gently while Ritter, across the room, was dabbing his own plant dry with a handkerchief. Seeing the two knights tenderly caring for Mandragoras in the same way struck Nikolaos as an oddly surreal sight. Chapter 46. Among the child sprouts, the purple one mainly stayed at the knight's quarters, so its presence there was no surprise. It lay sprawled in a long planter, reclining like some little nirvana statue. Then, Ritter came running out of the lodge like a lover late for a date, rushing over to it. He really had grown attached to that Mandragora. Was he still all right in the head? I've been avoiding syncing my awareness with that purple one, partly because I'm scared of seeing its memories, partly because I don't really want to know the details of what's going on between it and Ritter. So technically, I don't know exactly what they do together. I've only told the sprouts to alert me if the knights started acting suspiciously since I haven't received such a report. I've been leaving them alone. Let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Murasaki-chan. You actually became lovers. It was no surprise that Nikolaos questioned Ritter when he saw how intimate he was with the purple sprout, but hearing the reply, "She's my lover," still shocked me. Ritter had insisted before that his feelings for the purple sprout were serious, not just a whim, but to think he'd really call a knee-high plant monster his girlfriend astonishing. And this wasn't just any plant. It was a Mandragora, one that could drain magic by touch and could kill with its scream. I'm not even sure the purple one has romantic feelings. Maybe it just finds him useful. Well, since it doesn't talk, I guess he could mistake that for mutual affection. Even though the sprouts split off from me, they were far less intelligent. They should have emotions. But even I, who still remember being human, can feel my own humanity fading. So for something born a monster from the start, it's hard to imagine it could see a human as a romantic partner. They might simply view a caretaker as favorable. The purple one clearly didn't dislike Ritter, at least. I haven't received any report about this. Are you hiding information from me? Nikolaos's reproachful tone made me freeze. Right, these knights were supposed to slay monsters. A knight being in a relationship with one was definitely problematic. Even Leonhardt and the villagers had looked on with silent disbelief, pretending not to see. I'd completely forgotten how dangerous this might look if Nikolaos decided to take it seriously. If he judged this Mandragora a threat and turned that blame on me, that would be bad. No, of course not. It's just this is a private matter, not something that needed to be in an official report. It's not like I forced her or anything. We're a recognized couple. Which Sama approves? What? I never approved that. Ritter's outrageous statement made Nikolaos turn toward me with a disbelieving look, but it was news to me too. My startled reaction, of course, was sealed behind my lips. Instead, I'd instinctively smiled, which must have looked like confirmation. What do I do? That's not what I meant. I didn't think they were that far gone. I knew Ritter was drifting further from normal behavior, but as long as he wasn't harming anyone, I hadn't intervened. Well, honestly, if I did intervene, it would probably be to stop his breathing rather than his actions, so maybe silence was safer. Well, fine then. If you ever want kids, I'll help. Magician Dono, you're so kind, thank you. But only after we're married. Wait, what? Nikolaos's response respected Ritter's feelings, and at least it meant he wouldn't be destroying anyone, which was a relief. But help them have children, that part threw me completely. A human and a Mandragora having children?
But I can reproduce alone. I was a hermaphroditic monster. I could create descendants whenever I wanted. The seeds I produced now served as my eyes. If I buried one, my offspring would sprout easily. The sprouts currently walking around weren't born that way. They were made using my split skill, which meant they were degraded clones, not true children. If I grew a new plant from one of my actual seeds, it might inherit more of my power. But a true child wouldn't necessarily be as gentle as I was. I had no plans to create one. A new monster might not obey me, better to prevent that risk entirely. Some things simply shouldn't exist. Witch Sama and Magician Dono as well? That's a rare pairing. Leonhardt appeared as the discussion ended.
He smiled warmly as always, though upon noticing Nikolaos he straightened up, as if realizing this must be official business. Such a serious man. I hope Nikolaos's meeting doesn't take long. I'll relax once he's back in the capital. Even if his hostility had lessened, Nikolaos was still the one I had to watch most carefully. I'd followed him here because I wanted to see him safely leave, but then his next words nearly made me faint. We have to discuss the frontier defense plans. It'll take at least one night. What? He's not leaving. And then came talk that it could last several days. My panic spiked. If he stayed in the village during that time, where would he lodge? Knowing him, he might choose to stay near my house just to monitor me. No, that's bad.
Wait. What if I build him a place to stay first?
If I provided him a comfortable, exclusive place, he'd have no reason to come near my home. The knight's quarters were on the opposite edge of the village, with an open lot beside them, plenty of space to build. If I make it from plants, I can sense when he's inside. Still, maybe I should post a watcher too. I didn't want to sync with the purple one, so I called another sprout to come here while I grew a large tree. Normally, it'd be hard to shape natural plants into a house, but I could order them to grow as I wished. The idea was a tree with a hollow interior, a house within a tree. I even shaped tables, chairs, and hammocks to function as furniture. It was simple but comfortable, about as practical as a small business hotel. Yes, it looks nice. Nicolaus should be satisfied. Hey, what exactly are you doing? Eek, he's not satisfied? I'd used a fair bit of magic, but I was proud of it. It looked cozy and well made, yet his tone made me flinch. Maybe he didn't realize what it was. It's a lodging. A lodging. How do I write it? The grass around here was too thick to draw letters on, and I didn't dare take his hand to write on it. Just imagining that made me picture him instantly attacking an alarm. So instead, I nervously wove the vines together into wobbly shapes and crept close enough for him to see. I thought you might need a place to stay. You're an idiot if you think a simple lodging needs that. He sounded exasperated, but not angry. In fact, when he said, "Well, since it's here, I'll use it," and turned away, I almost wilted in relief. That was perfect. He'd stay there. The treehouse contained a faint part of my consciousness via the split skill, so I'd know when Nicolaus was inside. And once the new sprout arrived, I could leave it near him to keep watch. Witch Sama, it looks like rain. You should head back soon. Shall I escort you? Not yet. The sprout isn't here. Leonhardt's voice was polite and concerned, but I shook my head. The child hadn't arrived yet. I couldn't leave without setting a watcher. Soon after, the rain began pouring down in earnest. Ritter and Nicolaus hurried inside the knight's lodge, seeking shelter. I didn't mind the rain, it felt nice, but humans always ran from it. Still, if I took shelter with them, I'd be trapped in that tense space for hours. That sounded unbearable. Well, I'm already kind of stiff, but still. Witch Sama, you'll get soaked. Please, hurry inside. Leonhardt quickly tried to shield me with his cloak. He'd get drenched like that, and if he caught a cold because of me, it'd ruin my kind witch image. So I created a large leaf overhead, shielding us both. Raindrops drummed on it softly. Leonhardt widened his eyes a little in surprise. Forgive me, I overstepped. He smiled faintly, looking both apologetic and a bit lonely. I shook my head. His human warmth reminded me of what it was like to be human myself, something I was grateful for. Having a kind human near helped me remember what empathy looked like, and it was convenient that he'd stayed. The sprout had arrived. Through the heavy rain, splashing as it ran on its stubby legs, the little green sprout scurried between us, slipping under the leaf umbrella. To Leonhardt, it must have looked like it was seeking shelter, but it was simply following my order to appear before me. Oh, even a Mandragora doesn't like this much rain? Yeah, too much water isn't ideal, though that's not the reason this time. I handed Leonhardt the leaf to hold, then picked up the green sprout. Its clothes were muddy and brown from the wet ground, so I took them off and rewove a fresh set from fibers, dressing it again in green. It curled up bashfully, though that wasn't embarrassment, it was pretending to be cute. Now properly clothed, it was ready. I needed Leonhardt to take it to Nicolaus, but how to tell him? He's safe to speak to. I motioned him closer, gesturing with my hand. Under the large leaf, I couldn't get any nearer, so Leonhardt leaned his head slightly down toward me. With the veil between us, there was no risk of accidental touch. I rose on tiptoe and whispered, "This child, please take care of it. Yes, leave it to me." The rain was so loud that even this close, my voice was hard to hear. No one inside the building would catch it. Still, it felt like sharing a secret. I entrusted the green sprout to him, and knowing Leonhardt's sense of responsibility, he would surely keep it near him. Good, now I can watch what Nicolaus does with the knights. That's one worry off my mind. After giving Leonhardt the sprout, I created another leaf umbrella for myself and turned toward home. I had no more reason to linger. I'd quietly monitor through the green sprout's senses while resting in my house. Yes, this is the safest plan. I really am a genius. Chapter 47. When I walked home through the pouring rain, I found Noelle waiting for me at the entrance with a towel. Even though I'd been using a leaf as an umbrella, the splashing water had still gotten my feet and body wet. My body is a plant, unlike humans who are warm-blooded animals, so I don't feel anything like getting chilly just from being wet. But Noel got flustered with worry and quickly handed me the towel. Witch-sama, you'll catch a cold. Please warm up right away. Inside the house, the fireplace was lit, and a faintly sweet scent drifted through the air. He guided me to the chair prepared in front of the fireplace, and as soon as I sat down, Noel brought me a warm yellow soup. It was made from a plant similar to corn that we'd gotten not long ago. Basically, it was corn soup. The way it had been carefully strained so not even a single piece of solid remained was Noel's thoughtfulness, knowing that I only drink liquids. Witch-sama, your clothes? It's fine. This is part of my body. In the worst case, I can just unravel it and make it again. So you don't need to change then. Please take your time and warm up. I'll be going back to chores, so call me if you need anything. He handed me a light blanket and then began doing housework. Even if the heavy rain meant outside work was impossible, there was still plenty he could do at home, like making jam to sell to Eli. With the gentle melody from the lily of the valley, the sound of Noel working on jam, and the crackling of the fireplace as background music, I closed my eyes comfortably while basking in the light from the lamps Nikolaus had sent. It would feel wonderful to simply rest like this, but I had things to do, so I couldn't just sleep. I need to sync my consciousness with the green sprout and check on Nikolaus and the knights. If I synchronize with a child sprout, I can learn everything it has experienced so far, and I can also see what it's currently seeing. There's probably nothing more convenient than this kind of mobile surveillance camera. Of course, I'm not abusing it. I only do this to protect myself. I'm not invading anyone's privacy or trying to expose secrets or anything malicious, so it shouldn't be a problem, probably. I think, when I synchronized my consciousness and switched to the sprout's perspective, Nikolaus and the knights were gathered around a large map spread across a table, seemingly in the middle of a strategy meeting. So, up to the area where the witch has made the purifying flowers bloom, the danger is still relatively low. This is the boundary. When there are a lot of purifying flowers, poisonous monsters and undead don't really come near. The fact that so few monsters stray toward the village is also thanks to the witch. From this sprout's memories, it seemed they had been talking about things like this even before I synced in, and there didn't seem to be any accusations against me. So for now, I could feel relieved. The green sprout was inside a basket filled with purifying flower petals placed on top of the table, positioned in front of Leonhardt, so I could also see the map. Not that I understand much even when I look at it, but still. So because I asked him to take care of it. He's been treating the sprout with such extreme care? I kind of feel bad, Leonhardt. From the flower basket clearly provided with the sprout's comfort in mind, I looked around. Leonhardt was staring seriously down at the map, not distracted by the sprout at all, and the others were just the same. The purple sprout was sitting quietly at the edge of the table so as not to disturb the meeting, but I couldn't help but be bothered by that sight. Are the knights not bothered because they're already used to it? The corrupted land's ecosystem is made up of poisonous monsters and undead-type monsters, and the ones crossing this boundary now are only those that couldn't keep up with that environment, so we still haven't confirmed anything too powerful yet. But we can't say the same for the future. We've already confirmed some unpleasantly evolved underworld frogs, and Leonhardt was injured as well. Right, I think soon enough, monsters that create control-based ecosystems will start appearing. But we still have time. Before then, we want to strengthen our defenses, and increasing the number of stationed holy knights is what the higher-ups decided. You mean increasing numbers in this village? But then those won't be troops we can readily move in emergencies, will they? If we have the witch's cooperation, it's possible. The mana recovery potions she makes are on a completely different level. We're planning to have her support us from the rear. She made full recovery potions for the entire population of Bit Village in just one day, didn't she? If she makes medicine, casualties will be significantly reduced. The ones mainly discussing things were Captain Ritter, Leonhardt, and Nikolaus. Apparently, Nikolaus's job this time was to reconcile the reality on the ground with the opinions of the upper ranks of the country. For me, it's just making medicine, so it's not particularly difficult. But the humans actually have to expect real battles with monsters, which sounds really hard. Isn't this too much of a burden for the witch? Even for Nikolaus, the same demon kind, this would be harsh. Just so you know, the difference in mana between her and me is like an adult and a child, and the witch already agreed to cooperate. Besides, if she doesn't play a big role in the rear, then we'd have to ask her to come to the front lines, you know? That is, At times, arguments clashed and the air became tense, and although internally I was screaming from the pressure, the sprout's body also had a lid over its voice, so nothing escaped outside. They continued discussing coordination between the knights, possible scenarios and countermeasures, and all sorts of other things. And before I knew it, about an hour had passed and they went into a break. It really does require concentration, so I suppose it takes time. Once break time began, everyone relaxed and spent it freely, rehydrating, snacking, gathering to chat in small groups. As expected, Ritter started talking to the purple sprout, while Nicolaus came toward me, the green sprout. But before Nicolaus could get close, Leonhardt stepped in front of the sprout to block him, hiding me from sight, so all I could see was his back. "What? You're in the way." "No. I simply thought nothing must be allowed to happen to something that belongs to the witch. I'm only going to observe it. I wouldn't tamper with someone else's research subject." Judging from their tones, the atmosphere felt kind of dangerous and scary. Maybe because the sprout's body is smaller than mine, it tends to tremble easily, and I shook slightly in tiny jitters. "Hey now, don't drag that tense meeting mood into break time, Leonhardt. You too, court mage. We're all comrades sharing the same fate here, aren't we?" It was Ritter who cheerfully stepped in to mediate after sensing the atmosphere, and although I could see him from behind Leonhardt, his posture was bizarre. He had the purple sprout on his shoulder, then tilted his head so the little sprout could rest on top of his tilted head, basically a strange kind of lap pillow pose, and I was overwhelmed by the complicated emotions that gave me. This is getting ridiculous. Ritter, you should perhaps care more about how you look in public. Still, both of the men who had seemed hostile earlier let out small sighs, the tension draining from them, so I guess the effect was dramatic. "Are you always like that with it?" Nicolaus's interest seemed to shift from me, the green sprout to Ritter and the purple sprout. I couldn't blame him. Even someone 500 years old had probably never seen something as unusual as a cross-species couple before. "Yes, we are. We get along very well." "Ah, but I'm careful not to touch it directly since I'd get drained." "I see. Then I'll first teach you how not to get drained." There's a way to do that. A way to nullify a mandrake's absorption attack. If there was such a thing, I was very interested. So I leaned in, intently paying attention to what Nicolaus was about to say. Chapter 48. First of all, do you know why touching a mandrake's root causes your mana to get drained? Isn't that just how they're built? Like, that's what the species does? That's true, but it isn't absolute. If the mandrake's mana is stronger, your mana gets pulled toward it. However, if that difference is reversed, you won't get drained. A fascinating lecture had begun, so I was about to crawl out of the flower basket to listen properly when Leonhardt noticed me and let me out. He then set me down on the floor and I quietly bowed my head. To maintain the adorable image of a child sprout, I had to behave sweetly. If I was going to receive a monster lecture, sitting neatly and cute in front of him would be ideal. So I tried to walk past Nicolaus, intent on plopping down near Ritter. For example, in my case, even if I touch this mandrake, nothing happens. "Ng Akea Aa." Nicolaus grabbed me firmly from below and lifted me up, then shoved his hand right into the gap of my cloth covering. The shock was so extreme I screamed internally at full volume, though thanks to the lid over my voice, nothing actually came out. Panicking because draining Nicolaus would basically be murder. I flailed desperately, but dangling by my stem meant my short arms and legs only wiggled helplessly.
"What are you doing?"
Leonhardt flew over and seized Nicolaus's arm with force, causing Nicolaus to grimace slightly and immediately release me. Naturally, I fell with gravity and screamed internally, "Ah! Ah!" But before I hit the ground, Leonhardt caught me securely and held me, so I was safe. So scary. I'm glad I didn't drain him at all, because I was synchronized. The child sprout's mana was affected too, and I'd been worried what would happen if I ended up draining Nicolaus, who has less mana than me, but thankfully that turned out to be needless fear. So the mandrake's draining really is about mana difference. Well, the fact no fatal accident happened is the real relief. But that was so terrifying, I, kind of leaked a little. For the record, mandrakes don't have the same excretory system as humans, so what I leaked was mandrake sap, and it came out of my eye holes. To a human, it probably looked like I was crying. In truth, I'd just gotten so scared I'd metaphorically peed myself, which is humiliating. I do see this happen sometimes, but I guess child sprouts have smaller capacity, so it comes out quickly. Even if I leaked, what came out was just a little bit of mandrake sap with healing properties. It's not dirty, so I'd appreciate forgiveness. Don't grab me with that ridiculous strength. Seriously. My apologies. It was something precious to Witch Sama, so I panicked and misjudged my strength. Court mage, are you injured? This much is nothing. Nikolaus rubbed the arm Leonhardt had grabbed, still frowning. Even with one eye hidden, Leonhardt's expression clearly showed deep remorse as he held me trembling and crying. Well, leaking. He must have panicked while trying to protect me and squeezed too hard. Show me your arm. Leonhardt is one of the strongest among the knights, and he grabbed pretty hard just now. It'd be one thing between knights, but demonkind bodies aren't tougher than humans. Hey, don't casually imply I'm fragile. You lot are just overtrained. I'm about as sturdy as any normal person. Demonkind just builds mana more easily. That's all, understood? Yeah, I understand, so show me your arm. Nikolaus reluctantly rolled up his sleeve, revealing pale skin untouched by the sun, and a vivid red handprint. Even he lifted a brow in mild surprise, and Ritter let out a small, "ah" sound that must have hurt quite a bit. I thought you might have cracked a bone, but looks like you're fine enough. That's what I keep saying. I'm not that delicate. No, Leonhardt is really strong, though even in a rush he did hold back somewhat. I never intended to grab so hard it left a mark. I deeply regret my lack of control. The tension from earlier now sank into a gloomy atmosphere. Leonhardt looked genuinely remorseful, while Nikolaus wore a displeased face. Even the bizarre sight of the purple sprout perched on Ritter's shoulder couldn't lighten the air. Now, if I heal that red mark, maybe the mood will improve a little. Ah, right. I tapped Leonhardt's arm, and when he looked at me, I reached toward Nikolaus. Both of them seemed unsure what I wanted and looked troubled. Do you perhaps have a complaint against Court Mage? No, I think it probably wants you to get closer. My purple does that a lot too. Thanks to Ritter's hint, Leonhardt gently brought me closer until I could reach Nikolaus's reddened arm. I wiped my eyes, even stuck my hand into the eye hole a bit, gathered up the remaining sap I'd leaked earlier, soaked it into my cloth hands, and patted it onto the red mark, gently rubbing it in. What is it doing? Probably treatment. Mandrake sap has minor healing properties. See, the redness is fading. Oh, it really is, thank goodness. But I truly apologize. It's fine, I don't intend to blame you. I didn't expect this mandrake to have such strong will and hate it that much either, and I get why you reacted like that. At least it looked like they reconciled. Just as I was feeling satisfied with the outcome, I noticed Nikolaus staring straight at me. Why does it feel scary when he stares too much? This mandrake really is a lot like that witch. Wait, does that mean did he realize I'm inside this green sprout? Chapter 49. Of course it resembles her. It's Witch Dono's familiar after all, and it's probably imitating its master. Well, that's true, though it can't quite copy that witch's endless composure. Mandrakes are timid by nature, so that part's impossible. Thank goodness he didn't figure it out. Thank you, Leonhardt. I panicked thinking he'd realized I was synced with the sprout, but thanks to Leonhardt's smooth follow-up, it didn't turn into suspicion. As I quietly sighed in relief, Nikolaus took out a small bottle from inside his robe, opened the lid, and held it out toward me. Mage, what is that? Plant nutrient. It used up body fluid just now, so it's probably a bit drained. Now you really are thorough, even toward monsters. So this bottle was some kind of nutrient, apparently. If that was the case, it should be good for the child sprout's body, so I tried to drink. But for this little body, the bottle was kind of big. The size difference was like a baby with a milk bottle. Honestly, it'd probably be easier to just dump it over my root body, but that wouldn't be cute. So I decided to sip it slowly. Also, it was pretty tasty. Mage? Could you spare one for my purple, too? One large copper coin? Yes, of course. You're kidding. That was a joke. Nikolaus looked at Ritter like he'd just witnessed something unbelievable when Ritter immediately pulled out a large copper coin, but he still accepted it and handed over a bottle identical to mine. This stuff is expensive for just nutrients, so I'll explain things more thoroughly as a bonus. If we just need to close the mana gap to nullify a mandrake's absorption, then naturally there are a few ways to do it. There are like a method to make up for an existing mana difference? Well, a few. Nikolaus's lecture resumed. I listened while sipping nutrients, still held in Leonhardt's arms, and Ritter listened seriously too, while the purple sprout sat on his shoulder. Calling this scene serious might sound strange, though. There are two main approaches. Reduce the stronger side's mana or raise the weaker side's mana. For the first one, since a mandrake is a plant, you could weaken it with a specialized herbicide so it can't absorb mana. Hi! That's a violation of plant rights. I trembled. The purple sprout also clung tightly to Ritter's head, clearly terrified. What a horrifying idea. Using herbicide on a mandrake is abuse, violence. Even mandrakes struggle desperately to live in their own fragile way, so I'd really like people to treat them kindly. I could never do that to Purple. Look, it's scared. I know. I only said it's one theoretical method. Seriously, these things have such strong self-awareness. They apparently understand human speech too. Fascinating. Even if they're monsters, teasing them like that isn't exactly praiseworthy. Look at it tremble. Poor thing. I wasn't teasing. It's part of research. As I pressed trembling against Leonhardt's gauntlet hard enough to make a buzzing vibration, I spilled nutrient everywhere and ended up looking pitiful. Even while saying it was for research, Nicolaus handed over a second fresh bottle to replace the one that spilled, so maybe he did feel a bit guilty. It's kind of unfair the child sprouts keep getting nutrients. He could give some to the real me too, honestly. Anyway, back to the point. If the weaker side boosts mana, then either training or temporarily amplifying it with drugs, but the latter is illegal, so I don't recommend it. It's harmful to the body too. Then I just need to train, right? Yeah, basically. It's hard for humans to increase their maximum mana. But if you work hard, I'll compile some training methods for you later. And if you also reduce your mandrake's mana a bit, you probably won't get drained. That's not going to involve something dangerous again, is it? When Ritter asked, Nicolaus tilted his head slightly, fingers against his chin. If you just exhaust it and force it to spend mana, that's fine. Once your maximum surpasses it, as long as you don't lose consciousness, it won't drain you. Though if you do lose consciousness, the difference no longer matters and you'll get drained anyway, so don't pass out in front of it. Mandrake screams specifically to knock people out, after all. I don't really like the idea of tiring out Purple. Well, you wouldn't want to use the simplest method? The simplest method? Yeah. Stick a needle in the mandrake's root, drain out its body fluid. The words were so horrifying I screamed internally in terror and covered my eyes, instantly cutting off synchronization with the child sprout. My awareness snapped back to my main body. I jerked upright in the chair, hands covering my face. The cup on my knees rolled to the floor with a clatter, stabbing a needle and draining body fluid. That's just torture. Witch-sama, are you all right? Did you have a bad dream? Startled by the sound of the fallen cup, Noel hurriedly ran over. Panicking, I checked around. The corn soup was already empty and nothing had spilled or broken, so I felt relieved. It's fine. Sorry for scaring you, I just heard something really scary. Ugh, Nicolaus is terrifying. You don't have to force yourself to smile, you know? Even Witch-sama, there must be things that hurt to remember. I'm not a child anymore, so you don't have to worry that much about me. Huh. Even then, you still smile, so I won't worry. I know that about you, Witch-sama. Saying that, Noel crouched at my feet and picked up the fallen cup. He must have been talking about the witch backstory everyone believes I have. As for me, the only thing even close to trauma would be being forced to film that educational No More Like Terror program, Let's Be With Zombies, in the Demon Land. But memories from my previous life don't really carry sadness or pain anymore. Hanazono Misaki from my previous life and the current me are basically separate existences. Well, considering mammals and plants don't sense things the same way, it'd almost be stranger if they did feel the same. Beastkin may have short lifespans, but I'm going to live as long as I can. I want to stay with Witch-sama for as long as possible. He said that with a gentle smile, looking up at me from his crouched position. So Beastkin have short lifespans, huh? I'd never really thought much about lifespans. I knew demonkind lives very long, but I guess other races vary. Come to think of it, how long will I live? Plants don't exactly have long lifespan reputations, but mandrakes aren't just regular plants, they're monsters. And technically I count as demonkind, so maybe I don't need to worry too much. If I live quietly and die peacefully, whether that's after a year, 100 years, or more, it probably doesn't matter. As long as people think I'm demonkind, no one will question it if I live long, and if I die early, even if my identity is revealed after, it won't matter anymore. Should I warm up the soup? Or would you like some tea? Tea then, purifying flower tea. Remembering how good Nicolaus's nutrient solution tasted, I pointed at the basket filled with purifying flower petals. Noel nodded immediately just from that gesture. Understood. I'll go brew some purifying flower tea. Watching his tail sway as he headed toward the kitchen, I thought again how remarkably good he was at reading my gestures and how, because he fundamentally misunderstands what I truly am, he misreads me emotionally. Still, it really is better this way. No one should find out I'm just a mandrake. Everyone believes I'm the flower witch. A non-human like me can only coexist with people within that misconception. I'll behave myself being nice and helpful like a good monster. So at the very least, I'd wish I'll be allowed to live quietly. Chapter 50, Nikolaus Part 1. Stick a needle into the mandrake's root and drain out its body fluid. There's an organ around the middle of the root where the liquid collects, so you stab there. What are you doing to it? It's just one method of extracting medical components. That's why I said you wouldn't want to do it. Mandrakes are merely plant-type monsters, useful medicinal materials, nothing more. Treating them like people or cherished pets is what's unusual, and these monsters weren't supposed to possess strong emotions or will in the first place. Yet the two in front of him trembled as they listened to Nikolaus's explanation. At the very least, they were intelligent enough to understand human speech, and it was quite possible they had emotions and will on par with humans. Just what kind of evolution leads to this? Their levels are only 3. The level that shows a monster's growth rises when monsters fight and kill one another. The biggest difference between human status and monster status is simply whether this value exists or not. In Nikolaus's view, it represents absorbing the souls of defeated monsters. A sign the devouring soul grows correspondingly stronger, and that growth of the soul affects its vessel. The more the soul grows, the more the vessel gains the ability to change its form and function. The higher the level, the more a monster can evolve in all sorts of ways, and depending on that evolution, it may become a special variant. The witch's familiars had already undergone unusual evolution despite their low levels, making them extremely intriguing. Choosing mobility as their first evolution, that's not monster thinking. Mandrakes don't even need to move. Normally, a monster would prioritize growing larger first without human-like thinking ability. A monster wouldn't independently choose evolution like this. So either the witch had granted them such intellect, or she somehow forced this evolution. Either way, Nikolaus very much wanted to know how. And I think that Mandrake needs to grow too. Right now, it's just an oddball Mandrake. It needs to defeat other monsters, raise its level, and evolve. Well, if that purple sprout intends to pair with a human, I imagine it'll change in that direction. You mean have purple fight monsters? I can't do that. Under Witch Dono's orders, the mandrakes in the village don't have combat ability. It doesn't need to fight directly. Bring it weakened monsters or ones that are unconscious, and let it absorb them. It'll probably still grow. If you're going to do that kind of research, please get Witch Dono's permission first, both of you. These mandrakes belong to her. I know, even if its level rises, it probably can't escape her control anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. But if its mana grows too much, you might not be able to keep up, so over-leveling is forbidden. Even if he wasn't as obsessive about research as before, his interest in monster evolution hadn't faded. If the origin of demonkind truly was a child born between a monster and a human, then Ritter might someday become the progenitor of a new demon lineage. Though considering his partner was a plant monster far different from humans, the odds were likely very low. But if they did have a child, interesting? Would the child be a monster, a human, or a new demonkind altogether? Just imagining it was deeply fascinating. Nikolaus wanted to support Ritter enthusiastically. It wasn't as though monster-loving human partners appeared every day. This might well be the first and last chance for such research into demonkind origins. If it proves demonkind originally came from human monster offspring, then that theory becomes certain, though their lineage would be different from ours. If the demon's progenitor really was a monster, that monster likely wasn't plant-based. The flower witch only took that form because she used plant magic. Demonkind itself has no plant characteristics. Their shape is the same as humans. So the original monster was probably humanoid, but Ritter's partner was a mandrake. And because it was a familiar, it merely mimicked its master, the flower witch. If a familiar becomes the ancestor of a new demon lineage, then in a sense that flower witch becomes the parent or the true progenitor, doesn't she? There may be no blood connection, but the magical influence is undeniable, so it can't be called unrelated. Demonkind can only be born through a witch, supposedly because the fetus is affected by her mana. The mandrake familiars are constantly wrapped in the witch's mana. If a new race were born from a familiar, you could certainly call it the flower witch's lineage. So that means our kind hasn't actually died out as long as the witch exists. If there were no witch, no more demon kind could be born. That was why Nikolaus was alone and why he had to consider creating demon kind anew. But the witch survived, which meant there was a possibility new kin might appear in the future. Someday, if she chose someone to be her partner, if she ever wished for that. And if that partner was, mage, you suddenly went silent. What's wrong? I just drifted into thought. Isn't it about time we ended the break? Yes. Ritter also looks like he's about to vanish into his own world again. Just as unnecessary thoughts were about to pile up, someone spoke to him and pulled him back to reality. To avoid thinking any further, Nikolaus suggested they resume the meeting. After that, with breaks and meals in between, the discussions continued and they disbanded before midnight. They'd continue tomorrow. Rushing would only lead to careless mistakes, and overworking would interfere with the knight's normal duties. Nikolaus left the knight's lodging and headed to the wooden house built next door just for him. He felt a presence behind and turned around. There stood the green-clad mandrake. What? You planning to follow me? It lifted its short hand slightly, which was probably a yes. It was an intriguing research subject, and there was no reason to refuse, so he let it do as it wished. He only slowed his walking speed a little because he was tired from the long meeting. Definitely not because of the plant desperately toddling along behind him. Together with the green sprout, Nikolaus stopped before the house the witch had created. A house built with magic more skilled than his own, by someone other than him. This is purely magical curiosity. Something like this wasn't in the remaining grimoires. I never had anyone around who could use magic superior to mine, so of course I'm intrigued. Something unfamiliar stirred inside him. Restless, yet not unpleasant. Something he hadn't felt in ages, perhaps fun or joy, feelings like that. But getting excited over something like this was like a child thrilled by a new toy. Frowning slightly, he steadied himself and reached out, and when the door opened automatically in response to his hand, he made a startled, almost delighted sound he couldn't remember ever making before. He was grateful it was only a mandrake that heard it. Chapter 51. Nikolaus Part 2. The entrance to the flower witch's magically grown house was sealed with intertwined vines. There wasn't even a handle to grab. Nikolaus simply assumed he could tug or push somewhere and it would open, but the instant he reached out, the vines slid aside on their own. There was no way not to be surprised. Amazing, it reacts to people and opens. How does this even work? And why use such advanced magic for a simple temporary lodging? Just what is that witch? For something built just so Nikolaus could stay while in Bit Village, it was absurdly elaborate. Half in exasperation, he stepped through the open entrance. The green sprout followed in after him, and once both were inside, the vines slowly closed again. I've never seen a door that opens and closes on its own. What kind of idea is that? I could probably make something similar with magic tools. I should try sometime. Normally, doors were something you opened yourself, or, if you were rich, had someone open for you. But if a door responded automatically to mana, it could be passed through even with both hands full. If it could also distinguish people by mana and block unregistered individuals, it'd be excellent for security. Useful magic tools spread fast. If Nikolaus designed the magic circuitry and produced blueprints, craftsmen would soon mass-produce them. The inside, she even prepared furniture. What an unnecessarily considerate woman. Reigning in the last of his excitement, he looked around. The interior was lit brightly by lamp plants. There was a table, chairs, and in the back, beyond curtains of leaves, a suspended bed woven from vines. That alone would have been generous enough, but there was even a water source. There is a plant known as water pear, something travelers treasure because it stores drinkable water inside its fruit. Its thin skin is easy to pierce, and the water is safe for drinking or cooking. One such tree grew by the wall here, its many fruits at easy reach. Beneath it, the wood naturally jutted to form a basin with a drainage channel. Clearly, she intended him to use it for washing and drinking. At this point, she can apparently do anything. I could easily manage my own water with magic. You know, water magic was the first spell Nikolaus had ever learned. Even non-demon kind sometimes managed it. For demon kind, it was basic ability, and yet she insisted on pampering him this far. Isn't your master underestimating me a bit too much? He spoke while picking up the mandrake at his feet, but it was just a familiar. It only tilted its head slightly in confusion and, of course, gave no real answer. He set the green sprout on the table and then sat down himself. The chair was woven from vines, but surprisingly comfortable. The table was a translucent amber color, filled with flowers blooming inside it. Likely sap or nectar hardened around blossoms and vines, polished flat at the surface. It looked like flowers sealed inside amber. The craftsmanship was beautiful, almost artistic. Nobles would love this sort of thing. She looked calm enough, but if she put this much work into it, she must have used an enormous amount of mana. Either this was still easy for her, or she just didn't want me to see her tired. Thinking that, he reached out and poked the mandrake with a fingertip. Its round body toppled backward from the shift in balance, and it flailed its short limbs before managing to get back up. Nikolaus pushed it over again, and again, each time it struggled upright, a monster with no hostility, no anger. You look like you're relying on weakness and pity to lull prey into dropping their guard. There were monsters like that, things that acted harmless, tricking prey into getting close. But every time he appraised it, the same word appeared, harmless. Meaning, this wasn't deception. This mandrake truly couldn't do anything. This was basically a pet. In fact, with how well it understood speech, it might even be easier to keep than one. The mandrakes I raised in my room never got this intelligent. If intelligence really varies by nutrition, then a mandrake raised on dragon blood must have been incredible. Given the demon land now, it's probably dead. What a waste. If mandrake intelligence depended on nutrients, then the one raised with dragon blood should have become incredibly smart. If it survived, it would have evolved to suit its environment, maybe even become ruler of the demon land, but that land was now overrun by poisonous monsters and undead. Powerful monsters claimed territory. They fought, they consumed, they ruled, but nothing suggested a plant-type monster ruled there. If the mandrake survived, it would have fled that cursed place. Perhaps it died, or perhaps it escaped across the mountains beyond the border. Failure is inevitable in experimentation. And right now there are other subjects far more interesting. Even if I never recover the dragon blood mandrake, I can accept that. The mandrake repeatedly pushed down and forced back up, eventually gave up. It fell with a flop, curled its short limbs inward, and went still. Apparently it had surrendered. Sometimes giving up is necessary too, Nikolaus thought, and placed a bottle of nutrient beside the dejected green sprout. This is the last one. Too much nutrition isn't good either. It popped up energetically and hugged the bottle, then snapped a tiny salute. Nikolaus snorted softly and decided to sleep. He moved to the suspended bed in the back. The witch had the same furnishing. The night's lodging used them too. When he lay down, it was surprisingly pleasant. His body sank just enough, and the faint rocking motion invited sleep. This isn't bad. I'll probably sleep well. He dreamed of himself, swaying in a cradle of a shadow, leaning in against the light to peer at him. Likely his very first memory. He knew it was a dream. He recognized it as one he'd seen before. Normally, when the figure blocked the light, it became the face of his foster father, worried, on the verge of tears. But this time, when the light faded and the face came into view, it was the flower witch, smiling gently down at him. He woke up, or rather tried to jerk upright, but because this wasn't a normal bed, he couldn't get up right away, and the suspended bed rocked vigorously instead. Nikolaus covered his face with his arm and let out a silent, strangled groan.
What an idiot! What kind of dreams are you having? They say dreams are just the mind sorting its memories. No doubt this was just yesterday's thoughts bleeding over. Even so, the sheer embarrassing absurdity of it overwhelmed him, and he lay there for a while, absolutely mortified.
And he had no idea what kind of face he was supposed to make the next time he saw her. Chapter 52, Leonhardt. The meeting about the potential monster disaster from the corrupted land adjourned, its continuation postponed until the next day. Nikolaus went to rest in the lodging the flower witch had made for him, and since the rain had stopped, the green sprout entrusted to the witch gave a respectful little salute and left as well. With outsiders gone, well, technically there was still one monster among them. The knights began preparing for the night. Leonhardt, too, was doing his usual pre-sleep routine, maintaining his sword and checking his equipment, when Ritter spoke to him. "Today you were unusually tense, Leonhardt." "Yes. I'm ashamed of my lack of composure. It's not just inexperience, you really lose your cool when it comes to witch dono. Still, I get it. When it comes to someone you care about, your vision narrows. Leonhardt chose silence rather than respond directly. He could agree that affection narrowed perspective, but he had never done anything as outrageous as displaying that bizarre lap pillow position in front of everyone like Ritter had. At least do such things out of sight. But honestly, it's almost reassuring. You were always too perfect, always too stiff. Ever since you got involved with the witch, it feels like a bit of your real self comes out sometimes. Leonhardt glanced at him. Ritter was carefully applying plant tonic to the purple sprout's leaf, not even looking his way. Leonhardt returned his gaze to his sword, checking that no monster residue remained on the blade. He can be sharp sometimes. I thought no one had noticed. He had always played the flawless knight at work in private, always. He never dropped the act, not even when alone. He never imagined anyone would see through it. But Ritter, for all his incompetence in romance, still had a keen knight's eye. You always charge ahead, always shielding others, and you get hurt because of it. As your comrade, honestly, I worry. If you want to get back to the woman you love, take better care of yourself. You're right. A fair point. And yet hearing it from a man whose beloved was a female-shaped mandrake made it strangely hard to accept with sincerity. Once their nightly routines were finished, the knights went to bed. The building the order had borrowed as lodging had originally been a warehouse, just one large room. The flower witch had divided it with fabric curtains and prepared 10 hanging beds, one for each night. Those suspended beds were surprisingly comfortable, far better for the body than hard floors. They were truly grateful. I'll take first watch. You're all tired, rest. Thank you, Captain. Then we'll accept your kindness. Good night. They always posted a watch at night. They split shifts into front and back halves, and Leonhardt volunteered for the first. Sitting at a table lit by lamp plants, he wrote up a summary of the day's discussions. Normally, supply in remote regions was troublesome, but thanks to the flower witch, that worry was gone. They didn't need candles, oil, or magical fire tools for light. They didn't need to trouble the villagers for support. They were truly fortunate. If this place ever became a battlefield, she would be a tremendous ally. But if possible, I want her far away from the battlefield, living peacefully. Is that selfish of me? She'd fought in hell 500 years ago and survived. She'd lost all her kind, bore a curse that made her hated just for letting others hear her voice, and had been forced to live clinging to mandrakes in a corner of the demon land. Surely she deserved peace now. But the world and her kindness wouldn't allow it. So Leonhardt decided he would stand at the front. If he defeated monsters as swiftly as possible, overcame the coming disaster, maybe she could return to a peaceful life. Ritter had told him to value himself, but Leonhardt honestly didn't mind dying for her sake. How can someone who's never once been loved possibly learn to value themselves? His cursed eye grew stronger as he aged. Before it became lethal, he still lived with his family. Through strands of his overgrown bangs, he would see his family looking at him with disgust. He watched his siblings get praised, copied their deeds, and only got scolded. Sometimes he was even denied meals. No matter what he did, nothing improved. As long as he had those cursed eyes, Leonhardt would never be loved. He severed ties with his family, hid his eyes, and built relationships while acting the ideal knight. Because the instant someone truly looked him in the eyes, everything, trust, affection would be erased. If he showed his true self, he would be rejected. But if he wore a mask, only the mask would be rejected. The lesser pain was obvious. He wanted to be loved, so he performed goodness. And hiding his heart was a way to survive. No one but the witch could ever understand what it is to be rejected and hated, no matter what you do to have your very existence denied. That was why Leonhardt cherished her so much. She alone judged him as a person. Her feelings toward him were the only true evaluation of who he was. They would never be overwritten by a curse. If they changed, it would only be because of his own actions, which makes it terrifying to show her my real self. So in the end, I'm a coward. He wanted to be loved, but feared rejection, so he couldn't reveal himself. A weak, cowardly person. Some upright knight, indeed. Still, even if I exposed something this pathetic, she wouldn't laugh at me, would she? He wasn't used to revealing his heart. And yet with the witch, he felt that maybe someday he could. That was why he wanted to grow closer to her. But a man who had never been loved and had never truly loved, how was he supposed to know how to build proper relationships? How was one supposed to approach someone, especially in love? He had no idea. In that regard, Ritter has more experience than me. Though since his beloved is a mandrake, I doubt it's of any use as reference. There was absolutely nothing he could learn from that, is what Leonhardt thought to himself. Chapter 53. Nikolaus is going to be staying in the village for several days to hold meetings with the paladins, so I had expected him to come check on me, the suspicious one, frequently, but that wasn't the case. He seemed to be going back and forth between the knight's lodging and the inn I had built, apparently just working diligently. I've already shifted my consciousness into a clone at the plant by the entrance, and I told it to move if Nikolaus-san comes, so I'll know immediately if he goes in or out. On top of that, I had the greenstalks keeping watch so I could grasp his movements in broad strokes. From what I could tell, he wasn't moving around much beyond traveling between the inns. He wasn't wandering around the village, so I felt a little relieved. But at the same time, him not moving at all is kind of scary, so maybe I should go check on them under the pretense of bringing refreshments to the knights. They must be thirsty after all those meetings, so bringing drinks would be good. It had been getting cold lately, so warm tea would probably be appreciated. As I was packing my recommended set of purification flower tea into a basket, Noelle matched it by wrapping up some sweets. It was autumn now, the harvest season. The village's wheat fields were seeing a great harvest, and at the watermill next to our house, wheat was being ground into fresh flour. The mill was quiet thanks to the use of a sound-absorbing plant called silent grass, so there was no noise, and the villagers were happy to use it. Lately, Noel had been making elaborate bread and sweets with that wheat. Today, it seemed to be a cake made with fairy candy syrup. I couldn't eat things like that, but they were very well received as gifts for villagers and knights. And Noel seemed motivated whenever there were people happy to eat what he made. I wished I could eat them too, but I couldn't absorb solid food, so it couldn't be helped. We're bringing gifts for the knights and the great mage Sama, right? I'll carry them to the inn. Yeah, thanks. It's reassuring when Noel's with me, and so carrying the basket of gifts, we headed for the knight's lodging. On the way, I noticed Eli's carriage parked in the plaza, so he might come by my house later. I'd just take a quick look and head back. I didn't want to stay long because Nikolaus scared me. They say he sticks needles into Mandragoras to extract bodily fluids. Hey, that's so inhumane. Witch Sama, you look like you're having fun. I guess you're happy when a mage Sama is around, huh? Seeing me trembling and smiling at the same time, Noelle made that comment. And even if I wanted to deny it, I couldn't. If it were someone of the same kind, you'd naturally be happy to meet them, and I was a monster pretending to be one of his kind. We stopped in front of the knight's lodging and sensed the atmosphere inside. It sounded lively, like they were chatting. When I knocked on the door, someone hurried over almost immediately. Oh, Witch Dono and Noel Dono. Hello, you both look well today? The one who opened the door with a bright smile was Leonhardt. Whenever I visited the knight's building like this, unless I happened to meet someone outside or he was out, Leonhardt was almost always the one to greet me. Even though he was the captain, he didn't leave this kind of guest reception to his subordinates, and instead took the initiative himself. That was probably one of the reasons the villagers liked him so much. I just leave things like that to Noel. I mean, strangers coming to visit is scary. I remembered the time Nikolaus, looking suspicious with his hood up, had come to visit, and the time he'd even impersonated Leonhardt, and I felt scared again. Yes, I'd keep leaving guest reception to Noel from now on. Hello, Leonhardt-san. These are gifts from Witch Sama. Oh my, thank you as always for your kindness. Are the demonic wastes already that dangerous? No, at the very least, we believe there's about half a year of leeway. Monsters are less active in winter and they enter their breeding season in spring. We expect the disaster period to be around next summer. In the meantime, we'll put evacuation and defense plans in place, and we will absolutely protect everyone, so please rest assured. The way he showed not a trace of anxiety and stated firmly that they would protect everyone was reassuring. Noelle looked thoroughly impressed too, gazing at Leonhardt with sparkling eyes. When those who provide security act confidently, those being protected can feel at ease. He seemed to understand that well. If it's next summer, there's actually plenty of time, so part of me thinks we could just run away in the meantime, but, well, humans can't just abandon their lives in hometowns that easily. I finally settled down too, so I don't really want to leave either. There were many plants around here that I'd created using diversification and clones, and it was quite comfortable for me as well. It felt like proof that I'd grown accustomed to this place. a sense that this was where I belonged, and it seemed there was still time before real danger reached this village. If I remembered correctly, at yesterday's meeting they'd talked about bringing in new personnel and building defensive outposts between here and the demonic wastes. I'll help properly too. I'm a little uneasy about new people coming, but I'll have to appeal to them as a good witch as well. At this point, I didn't feel like I'd lose even if I faced most monsters, but fighting was still scary. Still, I intended to protect this village, my home, and if humans were going to stand on the front lines, I would do my best to support them from the rear. It's kind of surprising that Nikolaus-san hasn't shown up even though we're talking this long. He's talking with Ritter-san. Maybe because of his strong magical power, I could tell when Nikolaus was nearby, and he was probably aware of me too, but right now he didn't seem interested. He liked monster research, apparently, so his attention was probably on that eccentric person trying to bond with the purple stalk. He was talking with his back turned and didn't come over to pester me like usual. If his interest in me was fading, that was great. He could research whatever he wanted. Would you like to rest inside for a bit? I'll pass on that Nikolaus-san isn't paying attention to me right now after all. Witch-sama doesn't want to intrude. Please do your best. If there's anything I can do, I'll help, so please let me know. Yes, thank you. That's very reassuring. Well then, see you again. Leonhardt saw us off with a somewhat regretful smile. He was often with Ritter, so maybe having Nikolaus take his conversation partner had made him feel lonely. I was sorry, but I was grateful for things being as they were now, so as a small apology, I decided I'd bring him something he liked next time. I'd be his conversation partner then. Oh, but come to think of it, I don't actually know what Leonhardt-san likes. I'll ask him next time. Chapter 54. On the way back home from the night's lodging, I took a light stroll around the village to check on things. If there were any requests, I'd grant them. It's to appeal as a good witch. However, since it was harvest season and everyone was busy, the villagers were hard at work in the fields, and I didn't see anyone with time to spare in the village. Even the children seemed to just help out and play during breaks. Everyone's so busy just living their daily lives that even if you tell them danger is approaching, it's hard for them to act. I mean, unless you lose your place to live like Noel did, running away isn't really an option. Being told to abandon your hometown, the place you live, it's not easy. People stay until they can't anymore. That's just how it is. On top of that, it seemed the country wanted to make this village a defensive base, drawing a boundary line against the monster's habitat. They probably didn't want wild creatures encroaching on human territory and shrinking the areas where people could live. When people leave an area, nature grows, wild animals increase, and they start pressing in on human domains. That doesn't change between my original world and this one. It's survival competition at the level of living beings. I'm siding with the humans, though. I'm a benevolent witch. To begin with, I'd settled in this village before the monsters of the demonic wastes ever did. This was my territory. How audacious of them to think of invading and taking it. If they were going to try to steal the base for my peaceful daily life, then of course I'd eliminate them. This is probably what they call love of one's homeland, right? Looks like I still have some human-like feelings left. I was born in the demonic wastes, but I never liked that noisy place. I'd spent more time in Bit Village after identifying myself as a Mandragora, and by now this place was probably my hometown. Ah, Ilay-san is in front of the house. Right, I did see his carriage in the plaza earlier. Maybe it's about business. When we got back home, Ilay was waiting for us. The moment he saw me, he put on a suspicious smile and started rubbing his hands together, a very merchant-like person. Well now, Witch-san, you're looking as beautiful as ever today. And Noel, young master, you look well too. Hello? What brings you here today? Well, I was starting to wonder how that thing I asked you about was coming along, so I thought I'd drop by and check, see? What he'd asked for was a Lily of the Valley music box and advice on what to do with 4-leaf clover. For now, I'd made 2 pots of the Lily of the Valley, so I had Noel carry them over. Well now, 2 whole plants delivered. Much obliged. Much obliged. Ilay-san, these 2. This is the clover which Sama is growing. Well, it's not really 3-leaf anymore, though. Just like in my original world, 4-leaf clover was said to bring good luck here, so I'd modified a normally 3-leaf plant so that it would only grow 4-leaf clover. I'd separated those into pots, and Noel handed them to Eli as well. I've seen flower shops selling pots that only have 4-leaf clover before. I don't think it was white clover, but there must have been demand for it as cute interior decor. Still, There was no guarantee that people in another world shared the exact same values as people from my original world, and since I myself had a monster's way of seeing things and didn't find plants other than Mandragoras particularly cute, all I could do was watch Eli's reaction. I did like purification flowers, though. They were tasty. Well, now this here is a pot of luck, ain't it? All right, I'll buy it off you. By the way, how much can this be increased? That'll affect how I sell it. This isn't particularly hard. Let's see, I still have some empty pots, right? Which, Sama? Is this what you're looking for? Oh yeah, that's it. Thanks for catching on. I filled the empty pot Noelle brought with soil, plucked a single 4-leaf from the pot Eli was holding, and stuck it into the soil of the new pot. Then all I had to do was order it to grow. Just like that, another pot containing nothing but 4-leaf clover was complete. Witch-san, could it be that as long as you have one plant, you can increase these endlessly, like just plucking and dividing them like you did? Could even I increase them? That's right, I can grow them instantly, but humans can increase them normally too. Their reproductive power is pretty strong, so if you're not careful, it might turn into one of those garden herbs that explode in numbers, but as long as I order them not to overgrow, it should be manageable. Even in my original world, there were problems with highly reproductive herbs taking over gardens, and this plant had similar strength. But this 4-leaf clover wasn't a species intentionally bred by crossing genes. It was something I'd created through diversification after absorbing it, more like one of my underlings. Even if it was planted far away, I should be able to make it grow, wither, or change freely depending on my orders. In that case, this'll sell well to the common folk. I'll buy as many as you make. By the way, I've got a request. Your house is all fancy with plants, right? Think you could decorate my carriage with this lucky 4-leaf too? I see. Advertising display, huh? Yeah, I need Eli-san to spread the word that I'm a good witch, so I'll do it. If people associated lucky 4-leaf clover with the flower witch, that would be a good thing. Any shady image around me would fade, and I might get closer to being a symbol of happiness. I nodded and touched Eli's carriage. As I made fairly large 4-leaf clover and flowers bloom on the roof of the cargo bed, I realized you wouldn't even know they were 4-leaf clover unless you looked closely. Oh right. I was thinking of making giant clover too. I'll grow a big 4-leaf so you can tell even from far away. Thinking it could double as shade, I made a giant 4-leaf appear to cast a shadow over the driver's seat. With 4-leaf clover growing on the roof, pom-pom-like little flowers, and one large 4-leaf standing out among them, it turned into quite a fancy, cute carriage. It was definitely eye-catching. Witch-san, you really understand, don't you? You're the goddess of my business. Elia was deeply moved and delighted, so it seemed I'd made the right call. Now that he was a merchant who carried good fortune, he'd probably travel the whole country selling plants that came from me. I didn't want money, but having the image of a benevolent witch spread was more than welcome. That was what Eli had intended when he approached me with business in the first place. All right. With this, my reputation as a good witch should spread across the country along with my plants. Chapter 55. Since Bit Village is going to be developed as a defensive base, a notice went out widely asking merchants and adventurers around here to cooperate. Were you aware of that, Witch-san? We heard from Leonhardt-san that people would be brought in, but not the details, right? Witch-sama. Yeah, that's right. Adventurers, huh? They're probably people who hunt monsters. I've never seen adventurers and don't know much about them, but judging from the name and from the fact that they're being called to a place with many monsters, they're likely a profession that makes a living by hunting monsters. The Holy Knight Order is a public organization like the police or a self-defense force in my original world, and adventurers would be more like a private organization, something akin to a vigilante group. Since the knights belong to the state, they live in an orderly manner and their movements are easy to keep track of. But what about adventurers? If they're rough people, that's really scary. A small scream rises inside me. Be careful. When there's money to be made, it's only natural that unsavory types slip in too. So that means dangerous people might come? With that smile of yours, Witch-san, it looks like it's nothing to you. Guess that means you're also this village's guardian goddess. It's not nothing at all. If dangerous people come in and cause trouble, a benevolent witch like me can't just ignore it. If I have to deal with more situations, the chance that my true nature will be exposed somewhere increases, and that worries me. They're talking about building defensive fences and walls along the border between the village and the demonic wastes, so they want to gather materials for that. But with you here, Witch-san, wouldn't that be unnecessary? I see. What Eli is saying is that I could probably prepare the materials for the defensive base myself. Normally they might build stone walls, but if it were me, I could make a much better wall. Toward the demonic wastes, I should grow highly aggressive plants. That's what he means, and if I make most of the base and prepare the materials, there won't be any opening for dangerous people to get involved. When I nodded and indicated that I'd handle that area, Eli smiled broadly. Then I'll go gather holy water. You can only get holy water at churches, after all. I might be able to get ahead of the other merchants. Holy water is necessary as a countermeasure against curses. Even Witch Sama probably can't make holy water. You can't, right? Huh? What's holy water? I don't know. Is it made from a plant I haven't absorbed, or is it not medicine at all? Among the things I can make, there is no item called holy water. When I tilt my head, Noel tilts his as well, looking puzzled. Witch Sama, have you perhaps never seen holy water? Was this something I shouldn't not know? It seems to be part of common human knowledge. I panic. But even if I panic and scream internally, all that appears on my face is a smile. I worry that I might be suspected, but help comes from an unexpected direction. Holy water only became widespread as something that resists curses after the dragon's death. Fearing the resentment of a powerful calamity dragon, research into curses became active. A witch who stayed secluded in the mountains wouldn't know about it. Oh, I see. Then Witch Sama wouldn't know. So it was fine not to know. Thank you, 500 years of history. Apparently there are items in this world that can counter curses. If that exists, could it also nullify the curse of my voice? Maybe if I drink holy water, I'll be able to talk. But Leonhardt-san had a curse too, didn't he? I wonder if holy water can't do anything about that. That holy water might not be something all-powerful. Thanks to my mountain seclusion setting, making it natural not to know, Eli explains holy water to me in more detail. Holy water is sacred water that gradually accumulates when priests offer prayers at churches located in holy places. By drinking it, one can temporarily increase resistance to curses. Curses are a special kind of power that can't be fully defended against, no matter how high one's magic power is. From the perspective of a demon like you, Witch-san, they're frightening things. I've heard that most demon folk who died fighting the dragon actually died from curses. Indeed, curses are a strange power. Resistance seems to be determined individually, with some dying from my voice and others only fainting. Even birds with lower levels and less magic power than me sometimes only faint, while monsters stronger than me can be killed instantly if they lack resistance, as shown by the fact that I apparently killed many right after I first cried out into the world. For humans, curse resistance apparently varies greatly by individual. You can find out by going to a church. Those with high resistance have aptitude as saints and often belong to the church, offering prayers and working to produce holy water. They say repelling curses is due to the gods' protection. By drinking holy water, you're watched over more strongly by the gods than usual. That way, you can repel curses before you're afflicted. I see, so it's like preventing curses. It's not used to remove them. I think my father said holy water also works as a monster repellent. That's right. Curse-type monsters dislike it. For those kinds of monsters, just splashing holy water on them makes them disappear. Inside, I let out a scream. In other words, it's probably a deadly substance that could make me disappear if I drank it. A potent poison, something I never want to encounter. But don't Mandragoras dislike holy water? Yeah, that might be the case. I think there was research on that a long time ago. Mandragoras given holy water end up with their voices dried up. Any sweet hope that drinking holy water might let me speak is shattered. If I drank it, I'd probably lose my voice instead. The little mermaid lost her voice in order to live among humans and in the end turned into sea foam. If a Mandragora drank holy water to live among humans and lost its greatest weapon, its voice, it would likely end up disappearing in the end. Scary, scary. There are people in this world who do truly ruthless research. Holy water is a taboo for Mandragoras, so I decided to stay clear of it and as well as churches, just in case. Chapter 56. Early the next morning, leaving Noel, still half asleep to watch the house, I headed toward the mountain where the demonic wastes lay. My home sits between this mountain and the village, so if monsters were to spill out of the demonic wastes, my house would be the first to be attacked. It's my precious home after all. I absolutely have to protect it. Up to now, I'd only grown thorny plants to encircle the village, but that alone probably wouldn't be enough. I needed to build a wall of plants. The question was where to draw the boundary. Thinking that I at least wanted to protect the area where I'd grown plants, I walked along the river and stepped outside the thorns, only to find someone had arrived before me. Ah, good morning, Witch Dono. What a coincidence. The person standing by the riverbank with some kind of papers spread out turned around to look at me, narrowing his single golden eye gently as he smiled. It was Leohart smiling as always. There was no one else around, and of course Nicolaus, whose presence I could normally sense by his magic, was nowhere to be found either. Still, I looked around, wondering if perhaps other knights were nearby. There's no one else here. Thanks to Witch Dono's thorns and purifying flowers, there are hardly any monsters around this area, so I judged that a preliminary inspection could be done alone. Apparently he really was alone right now. Villagers would come as far as the watermill where my house stood, but they wouldn't go past it toward the demonic wastes. Even though my house and the village were protected from monsters by the chain rose plants, there was no reason to approach danger unnecessarily. The entrances through the thorns were on the south side, facing the demonic wastes, and on the north side opposite it. Heading north would apparently lead to other towns and the royal capital. Eli usually came from that road. Those who went out toward the demonic wastes were mostly knights heading out on investigations, so the southern entrance was kept open for their sake. If monsters appeared, I had instructed it to be closed and tangled shut with thorns, and any monsters caught there I used as food. Are you on patrol, Witch Dono? Thank you for your hard work. You're the one working so early in the morning. Leohart-san? Being a holy knight must be tough. Since there was someone here, it would be best to avoid doing anything too flashy. I nodded at the word patrol. Heading straight back might raise suspicion, so I moved closer to Leohart for the moment. Witch Dono, it's just the two of us, so it's fine. He whispered this to me, and after a brief pause I realized he meant that there was no need to worry about my voice being overheard. Because Leohart has a curse-nullifying constitution, my voice doesn't affect him. Even so, I possess a skill called diffusing voice, which causes my voice to carry easily. So even when I've confirmed there's no one around, I still need to speak quietly. This preliminary inspection you mentioned. Yes. Since Witch Dono has created these thorns, we're planning to add a defensive outpost around this area, a treatment station in case of injuries, a supply storage warehouse, a watchtower, and so on. The paper Leohart was holding turned out to be blueprints. It seemed plans were already underway to build a base here, and this inspection was for that purpose. As I looked over the blueprints he showed me, I remembered Eli talking about gathering materials, about how dangerous people might have to come and go for this. I can probably make most of this myself. Just like Eli-san said, if I'm here, we might not even need building materials, but this is a bit too close. Apparently the plan was to build this outpost right next to the thorns I'd set up. That put it far inside the area I wanted to protect. The area where the plants I made through diversification exist is actually pretty wide. Asking humans to protect that much is a bit much. The plants I scattered will naturally propagate and grow if I don't give them commands about growth. By sensing them, I can roughly tell the range, and it seems that purifying flowers are growing around the boundary of the demonic wastes. In other words, that boundary is around the place where Leohart had collapsed. I'd originally grown plants along the river up to that point, and after that they seem to have grown by absorbing toxins and magical power flowing out of the demonic wastes, forming a boundary line of purifying flowers. Well, it's better if it's farther away anyway. If something happens, I can go protect it myself, and it's more convenient to have some distance so humans won't see. The area was simply too wide to have humans protected. So for now, I decided to let them build a human outpost here and think about the boundary separately. I leaned in again to look at the paper in Leohart's hands. Maybe I got too close and startled him. I thought I heard a small intake of breath. When I looked up, our eyes met. Leohart-san? Yes, if I do things my own way. Please, go ahead. Even though there was no one else around, I asked in a whisper. Leohart matched me, replying in a small, restrained voice. Leohart was apparently the captain, so he should have the authority to make decisions regarding Bit Village. Since he'd given me permission to do as I liked, it should be fine for me to build the outpost however I wanted. It just needs to have the same functions as the buildings in the blueprint, right? Okay, let's do this. The buildings themselves didn't need to be especially sturdy, unlike the wall. They weren't meant for living in, just for temporary use. In that case, there was no need to make them as elaborate as Nikolaus's lodgings. As long as there was a defensive wall and a few boxes, it would be sufficient as a base. Combining various plants I'd absorbed, I built an outpost for humans. At the same time, since there was no need for fencing inside the wall, I withered and removed it. I could just relocate that to the outside of the wall. It feels like building a sandcastle in a sandbox. This is kind of exciting. Since I was at it, I expanded the range of the thorns that covered the village and made them taller, forming a wall. All the thorns were oriented outward, while the inside was combined with leaves of other plants to resemble a garden hedge, so that even if someone bumped into it, they wouldn't get hurt. Then, among the thorns, I grew flowers that fired seeds like a machine gun, grasses that tried to eat monsters like carnivorous plants, and trees that swung their heads with coconut-like hard fruits to bludgeon attackers to death, plants that would actively attack anything that came at them. These had surprised even me in the demonic wastes, so they should be effective against other monsters as well. Attack is the best defense. Of course, I'd ordered them not to attack humans, so they were safe for people. It turned out to be quite the fortress, I think. Still, I must have used too much magical power, because I felt a little lightheaded. I was getting hungry too, so soaking in the water of the purifying flowers or going monster hunting sounded appealing. Which dono, this is. If there's anything missing, just tell me anytime. No, this should be more than enough. I didn't expect you to go this far, but does Witch Dono really need to devote yourself to the country to this extent? Leo Hart wore a somewhat conflicted expression. Did I get carried away and overdo it? What if I looked like some inhuman monster to him? I need to earn points. Even if they realized I was a monster, if they knew I was friendly, benevolent, and able to get along with them, maybe they wouldn't try to subjugate me. Raising my favorability with humans was important. Is there anything you want? Something I want?
What I want is...
Because I talked to people so rarely, I ended up asking about the bribe far too directly. At this point, it was nothing but hush money. Leo Hart looked utterly perplexed and fell silent. Chapter 57. I was hoping that I could have more opportunities to speak with you, Witch Dono. Other than that, I have no particular wishes. Talk with me?
Just that.
I had thought that if it were something I could manage with plants, I could create it and offer it quietly as a bribe. But apparently Leon Hart was satisfied with simply talking to me. He must be feeling lonely after Nikolaus took Ritter as his conversation partner, wanting nothing more than to talk with a witch who barely speaks. What an oddly unambitious person. Isn't there anything else you want?
That didn't feel much like a bribe. When I asked again, Leon Hart's golden eyes wavered, but after closing his eyes for a moment, he smiled calmly and shook his head. No.
There is nothing else I could wish for at the moment. So modest. Does that mean bribes won't work on Leonhart? If he can't be tempted with material things, then trying to win him over that way won't work. In that case, I suppose all I can do is exactly what Leonhart said. Be someone he can talk to. He's always been especially kind to me. He seems to believe that we share the same curse, and I think that's why he feels a sense of familiarity. Still, talking with him is also a risk for me. My voice doesn't affect Leonhart, but it can kill wild creatures. If a bird were to drop dead from the sky, it could expose that the nature of my voice curse is something entirely different. Then I guess it really is best if we're alone inside the house. I can use soundless grass and have Noel go outside. That would be the safest option, and it would help me practice speaking too. Since I can't let anyone other than Leonhart hear my voice, I've spent so long not speaking at all that my voice still tends to tremble. I'm afraid that if this keeps up, even my ability to scream might eventually wither away. And more than anything, I'm starting to forget how to communicate through conversation. There's also the setting of me being a witch who lived away from human society for 500 years, so a bit of awkwardness would probably be forgiven. Using Leonhart as practice should have its advantages for me as well. Then next time will you come to my house? By yourself? Yes, I would be happy to. Leonhart smiled so genuinely at that moment that it felt like this had been the right choice. I thought I'd managed to gloss over the fact that I may have gone a little too far with the base when a chilling presence approached from behind, and I turned around. Behind me? No, more like above. As I looked up at the sky, Leonhart followed my gaze. After a short while, a human figure appeared overhead, quickly growing larger before descending to the ground. I knew who it was even before seeing his face. There's only one person whose presence can always be sensed once he gets close enough. Nikolaus glaring with discontented, damp-looking amethyst eyes. It seems he flew here using magic. What are you doing? Witch Dono helped with the construction of the base. It's almost finished already. Once we bring in supplies and some smaller tools, it should be ready for use. You really do use large-scale magic far too easily. If you keep throwing magic around like that, don't come crying to me if you run dry on mana. As he said that and glared at me, I shrank back. I instinctively grabbed my arms and held myself, but the more I screamed, the more this face would smile. So outwardly, it probably looked like I was standing there with my arms crossed, smiling as if I had no intention of listening. Nikolaus's expression grew even more bitter. I've heard that when demon folk suffer magic depletion, the symptoms are far more severe than for other races. That's right. You lot just can't use magic and feel tired. But for us, if our magic drops too low, we get sick. And in the worst case, we can weaken and die. What? That's terrifying. Do monsters die from magic depletion too? I'd better be careful. I still lack common sense and knowledge about humans. I'm practically a newborn, no, a freshly sprouted, fragile Mandragora. Well, my magic apparently shows up as unmeasurable, but even so, overusing magic probably isn't good for the body. But I still have plenty of magic left. I'm just a little hungry. I only felt a brief wave of lightheadedness. I'd gotten carried away because building the base was fun and added all sorts of mechanisms, so I probably just used more magic than usual. If I eat a monster or some petals of a purifying flower, I'll recover. There are many purifying flowers blooming in this village, which is a huge help. I won't run short on nourishment here. It's a good place to live. As long as I stay in land overflowing with purifying flowers, I probably won't die anytime soon. Witch Dono, are you certain you haven't overexerted yourself? If so, please, never do something like this again and take good care of yourself. No, really, I'm fine. I've gotten used to growing plants in this village lately, so it's actually become easier. Compared to when I first arrived in Bit Village, it feels like I'm using less magic to make plants grow here. Is it because I've grown accustomed to it, or because the land, scattered with so many purifying flower petals, is rich in nutrients? I don't know the reason, but increasing plant growth itself isn't particularly tiring. I slowly shook my head to convey that meaning, but Leonhardt still looked worried. Now then, how should I show that I really do have some leeway? Maybe a flower surprise. It should show that I still have magic to spare, so there's no need to worry. But if it's too flashy, it might look like I'm overdoing it and get me scolded again, so I decided on something humans like that isn't too showy. Since I'd just dealt with it recently, what came to mind was a 4-leaf clover. I created one in my hand, separated it, and held it out to Leonhardt. Witch Dono, is this for me? If you want it, sure. It'll probably wilt quickly, though. All I wanted was to show that I still had some leeway, but Leonhardt must like 4-leaf clovers as symbols of good fortune. He accepted it carefully, wrapped it in a handkerchief, and tucked it away inside his clothes. I see, so you're saying you still have room to spare, thanks to you. We need to revise our plans, so it'd be best to return to the inn and resume the meeting. I'll take this knight with me, go back quickly, and don't waste any more magic. Rest, idiot. Eek. I'm sorry for doing something unnecessary, I'll go back right away. Glared at again by the clearly irritated Nikolaus, his voice low, I let out a scream and hurriedly fled. It was far too scary to even think about currying favor with Nikolaus. I'll try bribing him some other time. Chapter 57.5, Leonhardt Part 1. Near dawn, Leonhardt was the first to wake. He promptly finished preparing himself. There was less than a year left before the expected disaster, and before then, defensive measures had to be put in place. Construction of the base needed to proceed quickly. With the freshly completed plans in hand, he intended to go inspect the site. You're up early, Leonhardt. Good morning, Ritter. It's still a little before wake-up time, so please take care. Ritter had taken over the latter half of the night watch. Careful not to wake the subordinates who were still resting, they exchanged greetings in hushed voices. Beside Ritter, sprawled carelessly atop the desk, was a purple stalk. Even plant monsters like Mandragoras require sleep. In their natural ecology, they should be sleeping underground at night when there is no sunlight. However, it seemed this Mandragora had stayed up to keep Ritter company, its posture slack and unfocused. It's fine. I didn't lay a finger on Purple Chan. I wasn't worried about that, but... Leonhardt, who had been looking at the purple stalk, was met with that comment delivered in a serious tone. What on earth was he talking about? No one was thinking he'd spent the night with a Mandragora in that sense. His colleague had completely fallen under the Mandragora's spell. Leonhardt even wondered if he'd become incapable of seeing human women as members of the opposite sex anymore. I'll be going to inspect the planned construction site. Please let the others know. Yeah, got it. You really are serious, Leonhardt. That's not the case. As a knight tasked with protecting this land, it's only natural. Whether or not he was truly a serious knight was something Leonhardt himself understood best. After all, the real reason he wanted to hurry the defensive preparations was purely selfish. He wanted to keep the one he loved out of danger. At sunrise, the village was still quiet and sparsely populated. Passing through it, Leonhardt slowed to a stop when he reached the front of the witch's house. It'd be nice if I could see her, but it's probably still time for her to be asleep. The witch lived on the outskirts of the village and only came into town briefly to check if there were any problems, rarely staying long. That meant opportunities to talk with her were few. Often they could exchange no more than a brief greeting. Even the other day, when she visited during a break in the meeting, she left immediately after dropping something off. She can't speak in front of people, so it can't be helped. A curse bound to one's voice is far more difficult to deal with than one like mine, which can be suppressed. Even so, without speaking a word, the witch's kindness and charm reached those around her. That was why she was beloved by everyone, and perhaps that was for the best. Still, even Leonhardt, immune to curses, found it a little regrettable that he couldn't talk with her when others were present. He resumed walking and surveyed the planned base location. With the witch's thorns protecting the area, even large-scale construction could proceed with minimal danger. Really, I can never thank Witch Dono enough. A holy knight whose role is to protect others, constantly being protected instead. I wish there were something more I could give in return. If only he had the chance to talk, he could ask what she wanted. Lost in such thoughts, he heard footsteps behind him and turned around. Soft green like young sprouts gleaming in the morning sun, a beauty as though flowers themselves had taken form. The person he longed to see stood there, and a smile escaped him without his noticing. Ah, good morning, Witch Dono. What a coincidence! It truly was a coincidence and good fortune. He'd hoped to see her, but never imagined he actually would. Meeting the flower witch like this could only be called luck. She returned his greeting with a smile, then let her gaze wander around them. It seemed she was looking for someone else, the court mage perhaps. Nikolaus was the witch's only kin. The wooden house prepared just for him was so meticulously made that it was far too luxurious to be considered a temporary lodging. It must be very comfortable. Nikolaus often chose to stay inside the inn. When Leonhardt had gone to call for him, he'd been astonished by the inn's functionality. The entrance door, incredibly, was enchanted with a special spell that opened and closed in response to Nikolaus alone. It wouldn't open for Leonhardt at all, something that even Nikolaus himself had been surprised by. It was apparently an extremely advanced spell, a door that could distinguish people and move on its own. Leonhardt had never seen anything like it anywhere else. And when Nikolaus was around, the flower witch seemed to smile the most, far more than when she was with Leonhardt. She looked cheerful and relaxed, and that weighed on his chest just a little. To Witch Dono, the Mage Dono must be someone precious. If even a demon who's lived 500 years is treated like a child, then I must look even more like a newborn to her. The difference in their races pressed itself painfully into his awareness, making the witch feel like someone far away, as if a cold wind had blown through his chest. Humans live at most around 80 years. Because lifespans differ between races, relationships across races are discouraged. From there, many humans came to avoid beast folk with even shorter lifespans, giving rise to a history of discrimination. Perhaps wanting equality in the first place is presumptuous. The witch would continue living long after Leonhardt was gone. He would exist in her life for only a fleeting moment. To ask someone like that to feel the same emotions as he did would be far too greedy. After all, Leonhardt couldn't imagine living in a future where the one he loved was gone, and yet demanding the same feelings from her would be unbelievably selfish. Then it's fine if I alone continue to love her until I die. It was enough for him to adore her and selfishly wish for her happiness. Even so, he wanted to remain somewhere in the corner of her long memory, to become someone she might someday remember gently, thinking that such a human once existed. Wanting that much was probably acceptable. That was why he didn't want to miss this rare opportunity to speak with her. He told her that no one else was with him, and that since they were alone, it was fine for her to use her voice. In response, the witch spoke to him. "This inspection you mentioned?" Hearing the witch speak so quietly at close range made Leonhardt's heart pound faster. It couldn't be helped. The topic itself held not a trace of sweetness, countermeasures against the demon lands. Even so, there was no way he wouldn't feel joy at the special privilege of being the only one who could hear her clear, dignified voice. Witch Dono is also involved in this village's defense. It's only natural to share finalized decisions. As he explained the planned base, the witch, already standing close, stepped even nearer and leaned in to look at the map in his hands. The floral scent surrounding her grew stronger, and he instinctively held his breath. When the witch lifted her face, her glossy black eyes, bright like glass, looked up at him due to their height difference, and Leonhardt saw his own reflection in them. Leonhardt-san? Yes. Would it be all right if I did as I pleased? Hearing his name spoken and being asked if she could do as she pleased left his mind in chaos. What did she mean? What exactly was she asking to do? The sound of his own heart pounding in his ears drowned out any chance of forming a question. All he could manage was, "Please go ahead." The witch smiled, seemingly satisfied with that answer. Chapter 57.6, Leonhardt, Part 2. The witch quietly stepped away from Leonhardt and lightly flicked her fingers, as if conducting music. At once, the surrounding plants began to stir, and greenery overflowed into his field of vision like water welling up from a spring. This is Don't Tell Me the base. When she had asked if she could do as she pleased, it seemed she had meant, "May I build the base however I like?" As he watched walls and plant-formed buildings take shape, he felt both admiration and a faint sense of disappointment, which quickly turned into self-reproach. What exactly had he been expecting? The walls were not all simple box-shaped buildings that could be used for various purposes were created as well, and even lamp grass to provide light at night was set in place. If they arranged supplies and personnel, it looked ready to function as a base immediately. Though the structures were made of plants, they would not wither as long as the witch was present. They had never had time to build more than a simple outpost anyway, so this was sufficient. No, more than sufficient. Witch Dono, this is. If there's anything missing, just tell me any time. He had been about to voice his concern. Was she not using too much magic to alter the surroundings so drastically? But she spoke first, as though still intending to help further. He had been thinking he should do what he could himself, not force the burden onto the witch alone. Yet once again he had borrowed her strength. Time and again, she acted for someone else's sake. No, this is more than enough. I had not intended for you to go this far, but is it truly necessary for Witch Dono to devote yourself so much to the kingdom? This witch was kind, considerate. Rather than acting for any one individual, she devoted herself to everyone. Even if her fellow kin, Nikolaus, received somewhat special treatment, she never treated anyone with contempt. She was someone who loved humans equally, who held them dear. But that did not mean he wanted her to wear herself down. Perhaps she felt guilt for being even slightly connected to the changes in the desolate lands, yet she had already given more than enough. He could not help but worry for her. He feared she might grind herself to dust in service to others and simply disappear. As Leonhardt held such thoughts, the witch gazed steadily at him. "Is there something you want?" "Something I want?" He had meant to tell her she did not need to do so much for everyone, yet the words she returned caught him off guard. Having lived 500 years without interacting with people, the witch was unaccustomed to conversation. Her words were vague and easily misinterpreted. He had already realized that in this short time, and yet this must mean she's asking about my wish. Could it be the base building was for my sake? No, surely not. That would be far too presumptuous. And yet, it seemed the witch cared about him more than he had thought. That alone made him deeply happy. What I want is, even when asked, nothing specific came to mind. His eyes were simply captured by the beautiful witch's black gaze before him. There was something he wanted, certainly. I already decided I cannot wish for that. Leonhardt knew that what he truly desired from the depths of his heart was something he must not wish for. Yet even knowing one must not wish for something, human desire finds a way to yearn for it all the same. He believed it was true that it would be enough if he alone cherished the witch and wished for her happiness, and yet somewhere within he could not help but think, if only he might receive some measure of her affection in return. He despised how greedy he was. If I might have more opportunities to speak with Witch Dono. Other than that, I have no particular wishes. Surely this much could be forgiven as a wish. He wanted just a little more time with her. If they could speak alone like today, perhaps they might at least become close friends. And if that happened, then even after Leonhardt was gone, perhaps she would remember him from time to time. Is there nothing else you want? After hearing his wish, the witch looked slightly surprised and asked again, as though to say there must be something more. Could it be she saw through everything? His deeper, more selfish longing, this very feeling? Surely not. If she has seen through me, that would be mortifying. Yet Leonhardt could not claim he had stripped away his hollow self before her. That was what he must aim for first, and for that he needed time to speak with her. He wanted to become friends, close enough to reveal his true feelings. For now, that was likely all he could wish for. No, there is nothing more I could wish for at present. Then next time, will you come to my house? Alone? Yes, I would be delighted. Accepting his first wish, the witch invited him to her home. She likely intended to arrange a place where the two of them could speak alone. That made him unbearably happy. As a wish, this was more than enough. If he were given anything more, his already strangely behaving heart might grow even more unmanageable. Just then, the witch suddenly looked up at the sky. Following her gaze, Leonhardt saw a figure flying toward them. The person soon descended to the ground and revealed himself. It was Nikolaus. Now the witch would no longer be able to speak. It was unfortunate they could not remain alone, but knowing there would be another opportunity allowed him to look forward to it. Otherwise, he might have resented Nikolaus's appearance for cutting their time short. Whether he knew it or not, Nikolaus cast a sharp glance toward Leonhardt. That look, understanding the emotion contained in his purple eyes, surprised him slightly. What dwelled there was envy, jealousy of that sort, and it most likely concerned the witch. From Leonhardt's perspective, it was Nikolaus who received special treatment from the witch, and there had been many times he felt envious of him. Yet today, it seemed the opposite was true. Chapter 57.7, Leonhardt, Part 3. What are you two doing? The witch had used large-scale magic, so as one of the demon folk he must have sensed the disturbance and flew over. For all his grumbling, he clearly could not help worrying about the kindred he had finally found. Yet perhaps 500 years had been too long even for him, for Nikolaus tended to be harsh with the witch. To prevent her from being blamed again, Leonhardt explained how greatly she had contributed. Witch Dono assisted in constructing the base. It is nearly complete. All that remains is to bring in supplies and smaller equipment, and it should be usable immediately. You really do use large-scale magic without hesitation. If you keep throwing magic around like that, don't blame me if you run yourself dry. Following Nikolaus's irritated glare toward the witch, Leonhardt looked at her as well. She stood with her arms crossed and a faint smile, showing no sign of fatigue. But if Nikolaus had gone so far as to voice concern, she must have expended a considerable amount of magic power. I have heard that magical exhaustion in the demon folk produces more severe symptoms than in other races. Leonhardt himself had experienced magical exhaustion before. It had happened during an investigation of the demonic territory and had interfered with combat. Even so, running out of magic did not render one unable to move. But for the demon folk, magic was practically synonymous with life force. It was said they did not age because their vast reserves of magic dominated their bodies, repeatedly regenerating them. If they were to exhaust even the magic required to sustain themselves, what then? That's right. You people might just be unable to use magic and feel tired, but for us, if our magic drops too low, we turn sick, and in the worst case, we could weaken and die. So it truly was a matter of life and death. Leonhardt had never once considered that the witch, an overwhelmingly long-lived being, might lose her life before him. The thought filled him with sudden anxiety. Ordinary humans would not devote themselves to others at the cost of their own lives. But this gentle witch, these demons who had once risked their lives to protect all other races 500 years ago, such a thing would not be out of character for them. Witch Dono, are we perhaps pushing you too far? If so, please, do not do such things again, and take better care of yourself. The witch smiled and shook her head. Did that mean this much is no problem? Or did it mean even if I must wear myself down somewhat, I will not stop helping others? It could be taken either way, and the inability to exchange words left him uneasy. Perhaps his concern showed too clearly on his face, For the witch tilted her head lightly as if in thought, then walked over to him with measured steps. Before him she opened the fist she had been holding closed. Resting in her palm was a tiny plant with small leaves, something she had apparently created with magic. It was almost like she was performing a magic trick. She must be trying to cheer me up. She could still use magic, and this much was nothing. There was no need to worry. That must have been the intent behind creating this plant. Normally it grew 3 leaves, but on rare occasions it would mutate and sprout 4. The 4-leaf was regarded as a symbol of good fortune, a common design used as a gift for someone whose happiness one wished for, or for someone dear. The witch showed it to Leonhardt and held it out without moving. Was this a small gift from her? Witch Dano, is this for me? When the witch nodded, Leonhardt gently accepted the 4-leaf. Was she wishing him happiness? It might not be the same as the happiness he wished for her, but it still made him glad. She readily created things useful for food, clothing, shelter, and medicine, but very few people had ever received something that served no practical purpose. At least, as far as Leonhardt knew, he alone had been given such a thing. It's just an ordinary 4-leaf, and yet it feels so precious. An utterly commonplace 4-leaf seemed special. He tucked it into his breast pocket, resolving to treat it later so it would last as long as possible. He noticed a dissatisfied gaze directed at him and gave a small inward smile. Until now, Leonhardt himself had likely cast similar looks at that person. So you're saying you still have some to spare. Thanks to you. Our plans will need revising. We'd better return to the inn and resume the meeting. I'll take this night with me, so go home. And don't waste any more magic, rest, you fool. Though his words were rough, the meaning was concern. Go home and rest. Hearing that, the witch seemed to understand her fellow's feelings and, smiling faintly, began walking back toward her house. Leonhardt watched her retreating figure, and only once she was out of sight did Nikolaus turn toward him, brows furrowed, his expression sharp enough to seem on the verge of clicking his tongue. I'll say this, demon folk like us and you people are different. Leonhardt was not so dull as to miss the meaning of those words. It was something he himself had been thinking moments earlier. Demons and other races had different lifespans. The time they lived was vastly different. Though not immortal, demons were ageless, and so long as nothing unforeseen occurred, they would live for a span approaching eternity. Because of that, even when they grew close to other races, there were almost no cases of romantic involvement. Demons and other races perceived time differently, and therefore the time required to nurture love differed as well. It was said that for a demon to love another race, there simply was not enough time. I know without being told, I will remind myself of that as many times as necessary. Witch Dono and I are far too different. That was why he must not expect her to direct romantic affection toward him, nor must he wish for it. It would be a futile, barren love. Having understood that, Leonhardt had resolved that he would be content with his one-sided love for the rest of his life. Yes, I understand well. I shall keep it firmly in mind. Placing a hand over his chest as if making a vow, he felt the presence of the 4-leaf tucked there and answered Nikolaus with a smile. This was enough for him. He sought nothing more. He truly understood. Then we'll confirm what that witch has done. You're coming too. Yes, of course. Perhaps somewhat satisfied, Nikolaus turned away with an expression of boredom and seemed intent on inspecting the base. Leonhardt followed after him all the while, thinking how enviable it was that Nikolaus would continue to share the same stretch of time as the witch. Chapter 58, Nikolaus, Part 1. Nikolaus sat in the tree, inn created by the witch, absent-mindedly gazing at the green sprout on the table while drinking purification flower tea the witch had brought. This tea had been given by the witch to the knights buried in meetings and to Nikolaus as well. There was no kitchen or fire-using magical tool in this inn, but for a mage, boiling water with fire magic was child's play. Since Nikolaus was not someone who woke up particularly well, it was his habit to spend time blankly sipping tea alone until his head began to function. But ever since coming to Bit Village, he had one attendant. You've been peering into that cup for a while now. What are you doing? One of the witch's familiars, a Mandragora, this green sprout, had been staying by Nikolaus's side lately. Though technically a monster, it had a certain charm and was not bothersome, and since it caused no particular inconvenience, he let it do as it pleased. While Nikolaus brewed the purification flower tea, the green sprout had jumped with its short legs and raised its right root hand as if to say, "Me too," so he had no choice but to prepare another cup. Yet, after peering into it, the sprout had not moved. Because it's hot. Mandragoras aren't very resistant to heat. It was probably waiting for the freshly brewed, steaming tea to cool to a temperature it could touch. Looking closely, the surface rippled. Perhaps it was blowing at it with all the breath its tiny body could muster. Realizing that, Nicholas let out a snort of amusement and decided to stir up a gentle wind with magic to cool it down. I command. Wind, scatter the heat. Ah. He had raised a wind to blow away the steam from above the cup, but perhaps startled by the sudden rush of warmth, the green sprout toppled backward and rolled straight off the table, landing on the floor with a loud thud. When he cautiously peered beneath the table, he saw it striking a landing pose. It must simply have been heavy enough to make a loud sound. The landing itself seemed successful. Sorry about that. I meant to cool it down. It should probably be fine now, so go ahead and drink. At that, the small sprout climbed up the table leg. Despite its round body and short limbs, it moved quite deftly, approaching the cup once more. The green sprout tilted it little by little and skillfully absorbed the liquid through its mouth. It would be faster to dip its root hands into it, but the way it tried to imitate humans was what made the witch's Mandragora so fascinating and amusing. You never get tired of observing them. I could stay like this forever, though. Admittedly, am I avoiding her too much? Ever since he had that strange dream, Nikolaus had found it difficult to face the witch and had been avoiding her. He had not even met her eyes, so she must surely have noticed. Which was likely why she had left this green sprout by his side out of concern. Given that a familiar sprout was stationed at the entrance of Bit Village, there must be some mechanism by which any abnormality could be reported to its master, the witch. The green sprout by Nikolaus's side was probably placed there by the overprotective witch out of concern for him. I do have something to discuss about their evolution. Maybe it's about time I go. Ritter intended, not as a joke but seriously, to unite with the Mandragora, wearing purple cloth among the witch's familiars, and for that reason planned to obtain the witch's permission regarding the familiar's evolution. Today he would finally speak of it. Having resolved himself, Nikolaus suddenly stood at a chill that seemed to race up his spine, a powerful sense of wrongness. The surrounding magical power swayed violently enough to make his skin crawl. He hurried outside, and the moment he saw the plants around him rustling, he understood the owner of this magic. That witch? What is she doing? He cast flight magic and rose into the sky. From there, the changes to the village were immediately visible. Originally, a plant called chain rose formed a fence protecting Bit Village, but its range had expanded and its height had grown remarkably. It was like a castle wall. He also quickly determined where the witch herself was. Passing through the village and beyond her house, on the way toward the demon realm, at the planned site of a defensive base in preparation for monster disasters. Only that area was still in the midst of plant proliferation, so he hastened there. Using this much magic, building a base alone? True, the monster's habitat range has been shifting lately, and the walls should be hurried, but this is going too far, even for someone soft-hearted. It's foolish. As expected, the witch was there. From above, he could see that plant-made buildings stood arranged almost exactly according to the blueprint he and the knights had assembled. The problem was that another person, who must have secretly exchanged plans with the witch while showing her the blueprint, was there as well. This guy again. So you were planning to build a base together at this hour without even telling me. The man serving as captain of the Holy Knight Order's 1st Division, Leonhardt. Those in this position often became commander in the future. It was proof of how much trust and expectation surrounded him, yet Nikolaus had his doubts about this man based on how he behaved toward the witch. He was probably not as admirable as people claimed. "What are you two doing?" His voice came out accusatory. Of course, it was Leonhardt who offered an explanation. The witch merely smiled with her arms crossed, as though watching a troubled child, but this time Nikolaus had no intention of letting it slide. Did they think someone sensitive to magic like him would not notice just how much magical power had been used? This woman has completely overwritten the land's magic. If her own magic fills the land, plant magic would be easier to use and defend with. But this is reckless. He knew this from a diary left behind by a certain Demenkin. Among monsters, some possessed their own domains, and by suffusing the land with their own magic, they strengthened themselves within that territory. There had even been demons researching how imitating that method would allow stronger magic to be used more easily. It had supported the theory that demon folk descended from monsters, so Nicolaus remembered it well. However, creating a personal domain consumed an enormous amount of magic. Even demons of the past could at most territorialize their home and the surrounding area. To enclose an entire village like this, it would be absurd to think there would be no strain on the body, so he had thought, but apparently the witch still had strength to spare. Despite expending that much magic, she was even creating unnecessary plants to gift to Leonhardt. She likely wanted to wordlessly convey to the worried Leonhardt that she still had magic to use, that there was no problem. She may still have some strength left, but she still expended magic, and yet she goes out of her way to create plants for that man. For some reason, the sight irritated him to the core. More than anything, he disliked the way Leonhardt looked at the witch. So you're saying you still have some to spare? Thanks to you, our plans will need revising. We'd better return to the inn and resume the meeting. I'll take this night with me, so go home, and don't waste any more magic. Rest, you fool. In his irritation, he ended up speaking harshly. The witch turned her back to him with a troubled smile, though he had told her to go. His eyes followed her departing back. No, even if she seemed to have some strength left, she must be tired from spending magic, so letting her rest at home was not the wrong decision. He had said nothing wrong, probably. What am I even doing? He had meant to speak with her normally, yet things had gone off track. Well, he would think about the witch later. For now, this man was the bigger issue. Chapter 59. Nicolaus Part 2. For someone of another race to fall in love with a demon is utterly futile, and above all, it is not something desirable for a demon either. Unlike others, demon folk do not possess what could truly be called a lifespan. Yet they can die. The time of other races is far too short, too fleeting. When one loses a human to whom deep affection has been given, it is the demon folk left behind who is wounded most deeply. After all, I can't guarantee she won't develop some affection for this man. She's absurdly kind, meddlesome, and seems the type to grow attached. I have to give a proper warning here. Because our sense of time differs, demon folk rarely develop romantic feelings for other races. Such cases were rare even for the beastmen, despite often living together. However, though few, there have been precedents of romance with humans, and records remain describing how tragically they ended. There is no guarantee Flower Witch will not follow that same path. Nicolaus had no intention of losing his last kindred to some foolish act like following a person of another race to the grave. I'll say this, demon folk like us and you people are different. The lifespan of beastmen is roughly 40 years. Humans, even if long-lived, reach about 80 at most, with only rare records exceeding 100. That is nothing like demon folk, who live for hundreds or thousands of years. Among demon folk, over the long span of time, one might become friends, become spouses, drift apart, then grow close again, because they live for so long. Relationships are not confined in that way, but with a race that cannot even live 100 years, relationships do not change so easily. They die before they have the chance to change. It would be troublesome if he got ahead of himself thinking he could become her lover or spouse. If that were to happen, it would be the witch who suffered. Yes, I understand. Well, I shall keep it firmly in mind. Though Nicolaus glared at him, Leonhardt replied with a calm expression from the tone of his voice. It seemed he did understand, at least to some extent, that he would carry his feelings while knowing they should not be fulfilled. If he understood, then that was enough. Nicolaus let his irritation subside. He had no hobby of tormenting a youth who had barely lived 20 years. Then we'll confirm what that witch has done. You're coming too. Yes, of course. With Leonhardt in tow, he exited through a passage created in part of the wall. The plants manipulated by magic would open widely only for humans to pass, and close firmly when monsters approached. The same magic was used at the entrance to Nicolaus's lodging, though he did not understand its principle. Distinguishing between humans and monsters through magic would be one thing, but identifying individuals was quite advanced. It had never even occurred to Nicolaus that plants could possess such will. In this field, the Flower Witch truly possessed genius-level ideas and concepts. Mage Dono stepped back. Titched, distracted by the moving magic of the chain rose wall, he failed to notice another monster close by. Leonhardt grabbed Nicolaus by the shoulder and shoved him back, drawing his sword, as brutishly strong as ever. Rubbing his slightly aching right shoulder where he had been seized, Nicolaus looked at what Leonhardt had drawn his blade against. Wait, something's off. It hasn't moved, even with us this close and directing hostility at it. You're right. At this distance, it would normally swing that fruit around. Right beside the wall, half buried within it as though hiding, was a plant-type monster called Ayashi, a tree that bore large, hard fruit. It kills prey by swinging those fruit like clubs. Despite being a plant, it possessed high physical attack power, so the usual method of subjugation was to avoid its range and attack from afar with magic. Plant-type monsters coming this close. Plant monsters generally rooted themselves where they were born, but if the soil proved unsuitable, they could move. Perhaps because the nearby area had become poisoned land, plant-type monsters that seemed to have descended from that mountain had recently begun increasing on this side of the purification flower boundary. They had gradually begun appearing near the village, but he had not expected one to be this close. He had let his guard down, but even so, this monster showed no sign of attacking, remaining completely still as though it were an ordinary plant. Upon appraising it, he learned it had been made incapable of attacking humans, and he relaxed. It seems to be one of the witch's familiars. Witches? So she can now turn things other than Mandragoras into familiars. Well, it's the same type of magic in principle. Once you can do it with one species, you'll likely manage others quickly, though this monster's level is low, newly born. Perhaps she can turn any weak plant-type monster like this into a familiar. It seemed she had not only built the base, but also turned monsters into familiars and positioned them there. Just how much magic had she used? The thought began to worry him. And as they surveyed the perimeter of the base, it became clear there was not just one such familiar monster. There were multiple and of several types. I never imagined being protected by monsters. Is turning monsters into familiars something that can be done in such a short time? 1 or 2 would be one thing, but there are more than 10. Normally, there's no way her magic would last. What kind of a monster is she? A great demon who had survived the war with dragons. No one even knew how long she had lived. Even if she were such a legendary existence, she was still a person. There should be limits. Judging by his own standards, the magic she had used would already have exhausted him completely. It was utterly outlandish. In that case, Witch Dono must have been preparing to have the familiar monsters handle defense. Thanks to the purification flowers, the land on this side of the boundary with the desolate lands had become something like a paradise for plants and herbivores. New plant monsters were more likely to be born, and perhaps she had been turning them into familiars daily in preparation. That at least was understandable. Even so, she's used too much magic. That woman, she looked like she had room to spare, but after inspecting the walls, he understood that the witch truly intended to protect this village. Plants that did not attack humans, but attacked monsters. Plant monsters equipped with both long-range and close-range attacks placed strategically. There were even monsters that could serve as food in an emergency. She must have personally considered their placement and ordered them to move. Such a carefully constructed base. Perhaps she had been overexerting herself. Perhaps the reason she had stood with her arms crossed before him was not a sign of composure, but simply to brace her body from collapsing. That fool does seem the type to overdo things for others, honestly. She's such a handful. He could not speak properly with her today, but later perhaps he would bring her something, is what Nikolaos thought. Chapter 60. Nikolaos Part 3. We're heading back for now. The situation at the base should also be reported to the higher-ups. Yes, indeed. But we truly must thank Witch Dono. Leonhardt glanced toward the direction of the witch's house. For Nikolaos, irritation rose before gratitude. Others might not understand, but as one of her own kind, he could clearly see that she had used a dangerously excessive amount of magic. That woman sacrifices herself too much. Can't she value her own life more? She's not some hero. A hero whose mission was to prevail over disasters at the cost of their own life was the embodiment of self-sacrifice, but that witch should not be one. It was said that the hero who had been among the demons during the subjugation of the Calamity Dragon had died. Therefore, she was not that. She was simply someone with a devoted nature, inclined to sacrifice herself for others. Being too virtuous was also a problem. Kindness built upon self-sacrifice might appear beneficial to others, but in truth it burdened those around her as well, so that Nikolaos's worry would not reach her. His concern was merely brushed off. The rest of them don't matter. There are only the 2 of us left. There were only 2 of demon folk left in this world, and yet she did not value her own life more. That thought left him bitter. Returning with Leonhardt to the night's lodging, Nikolaos suddenly remembered what he had left behind when he rushed out earlier. Go on ahead and gather everyone. Understood. Turning on his heel before the door, he made his way toward his own place. He had dashed outside in response to the turbulence of magic. So the door, which reacted only to Nikolaus, must have shut immediately. Standing before the treehouse, the vine door opened, as expected. The green sprout that had been left behind in front of the door was trembling as it waited. Sorry for locking you out. I've got a favor to ask. Inside his sleeve, Nikolaus carried a magical tool that utilized teleportation magic, allowing him to retrieve small, bottle-sized items from another storage location. From there, he selected the nutritional tonic he usually used, took it out, and handed it to the green sprout, which tilted its round body as if cocking its head. Take that nutritional tonic to the witch. It's not as effective as a magic recovery potion, but it's better than nothing. And that one needs to be fresh, and requires Mandragora as an ingredient, so I can't make it immediately. This tonic was something Nikolaus used in place of meals when he immersed himself in research. It was highly nutritious and eased mental fatigue, so he kept a stock of it. If magic had been expended, a magic recovery potion would be most effective, but that required effort to prepare. Unlike the witch, who could freely manipulate plants, Nikolaus had to follow proper procedures to compound it, and Mandragora was indispensable as a medicinal ingredient. Yet all the Mandragoras in this village were the witch's familiars, and they possessed free will. Even now, seeing the sprout cling to the bottle and tremble upon hearing the word ingredient, the thought of grinding and squeezing it would not arise, though in the first place he would not do something so arbitrary with someone else's research subject. It really does understand words, but it's not moving. Did the witch tell it to watch me? She would not worry about herself, yet she worried about Nikolaus. That woman truly left him exasperated. If you don't want to be used as an ingredient, take that and hurry. Go. When he tried threatening it, the green sprout saluted once, raised the bottle overhead, and ran off. He had thought that if it understood words, threatening a timid Mandragora would be effective, but it was strikingly so. Still threatening, it doesn't feel good. Unless absolutely necessary, I'll refrain from doing that. Letting out a small sigh, Nikolaus began walking toward the knight's lodging. At the edge of his vision, a cloud of dust rose. He stopped and looked in that direction, and soon a small figure running toward him came into view, with layered petals swaying atop its head, making it appear large and splendid. The one who ran up before Nikolaus was a sprout clad in pink cloth. I see a shift change. That witch must be terribly concerned about me. Perhaps she was also worried because Nikolaus had been in a bad mood just before they parted. With a quiet click of his tongue, he looked down at the pink sprout. The ones Nikolaus usually saw were the purple sprout who stayed with Ritter, or the green sprout that followed him around. This pink one likely spent its time with the villagers. He might not have seen it since the day he first visited the witch's house. The purple and green ones have strong wills, but this pink one... All the Mandragoras were made to wear cloth by the witch. Each cloth was dyed a different color, making them distinguishable by color except for the purple one, which had a distinctive shape. However, this pink sprout wore clothing in addition to that cloth. It had on what looked like a white frilled lace apron, like a maid one might see at a royal castle. Holding up the edge of its skirt, it gave a bow, quite different from the green sprout that saluted. You lot really are full of individuality. Well, whatever, you're following me too, right? Come on. Yet instead of trailing behind him as expected, the pink sprout ran ahead of Nikolaus and reached the door first. It knocked, and by the time Nikolaus arrived, it had gracefully opened the door and held it in place, waiting, like a retainer. How do they develop such distinct personalities? Honestly, you'd better explain this to me in detail, or I'll make sure you don't die until I uncover it through research myself. Thanks to her building the base all at once, time had been saved. With preparations laid out this thoroughly, failing to protect it would be unforgivable negligence. As he ran through what needed to be done in his mind, he briskly passed by the pink sprout, which trembled while holding the door open. Once things settled down from revising the strategy, I'll finally go speak about the Mandragora's evolution.